Chapter 1442. Dang! The bell rang, and light shone. The gate of the Hall of Inheritance slowly opened. Under the pillar by the door, Pai Yangqiu rolled his eyes and looked around. Could it be that Junior Marshal's sister Wan is not coming? Lu Tian leaned on the pillar. Who knows? If she doesn't come, that kid is finished. Maybe he has already escaped. How dare he? On the other side of the gate stood a few unfamiliar direct disciples. Some wore jade belts and tall crowns, some wore long hair and carried swords. All of them looked extraordinary. Gushing was among them. Except for him, the others looked a little impatient. A small problem that they thought could be easily solved turned out to be a confrontation in the Hall of Inheritance. When the gate was fully opened, a female cultivator walked out. Her purple dress trailed on the ground. Her hair was like clouds. She looked dignified and smiling. She was also a direct disciple. She put her hands on her waist and asked, "Why are you all standing outside like idiots?" Third senior sister, junior sister Wan, is not here yet, Gushing hurriedly explained. This third senior sister, Dai Mengfan, was ranked after Chao Tianjiao on the list of versatility. No matter who became the eldest senior brother, she would always be the third senior sister. She was now in charge of the Hall of Inheritance and presided over all matters. It was Gushing's enlistment order that Wan Yaozhu asked the Hall of Inheritance to discuss. The others were only invited to help. Only the two of them could not be absent. "I've been here for a long time." Dai Mengfan smiled and pointed at the white jade steps. Ding! A 9-colored rainbow rippled, and a person and a deer appeared. The deer's hooves lightly stepped on the white jade steps and came to the gate. Wan Yaozhu landed lightly and bowed her head. "Senior sister." Everyone was speechless. There were so many direct disciples here, but no one noticed her. Gu Xing said in a deep voice, "Junior sister Ruan's art of concealment is really mysterious. Just now, she refuses to show up. Is it because she doesn't want to meet us?" Wan Yaozhu was not good with words, and now she seemed even more inarticulate. Pai Yangqiu flashed over. He replied with a smile, "If I had such a skill, I probably wouldn't want to meet you now. Then you should hide forever. Don't let me see you." Lu Tian walked over with a grin and interrupted, "Greetings, senior and junior brothers." Gushing snorted coldly. He was even more displeased with the person who had set him up. Although the two sides didn't draw their swords, they didn't show any signs of hostility. "Cut the crap. If you have something to say, come on in." Dai Mengfan put her arm around Wan Yaozhu's shoulder and walked towards the successor hall. She transmitted her voice to Wan Yaozhu. "Blockhead, oh blockhead, don't blame senior sister for not supporting you this time. That kid is too arrogant." All the true disciples entered, and the door slowly closed again. Wan Yaozhu turned her head back and looked at the clear blue sky, without a cloud in sight. She prayed silently in her heart, "No matter what, I will not be able to escape. I hope you're safe." Boom! A loud noise shook the entire island. The volcano that had been silent for an unknown number of years suddenly erupted, spewing out black smoke, crushed rocks, and raging flames. Looking down from the sky, it looked like a burning torch. With a whoosh, a 5-colored divine light soared into the sky from the thick smoke and raging flames. It quickly circled around the rising mushroom cloud a few times, and then turned to the vast sea. The moment it fell into the sea, the 5-colored divine light instantly changed and turned mainly blue. It didn't cause any ripples or splashes on the surface of the sea. It quickly passed by a slowly swimming giant turtle. The 5-colored divine light suddenly fell again. It plunged into the seabed, passing through layers of soil and rocks. The color changed again. From fire to water, from water to earth. The light shuttled quickly. It was unhindered. In the five-color divine light was Li Qingshan. He was overjoyed. After several days of continuous cultivation, he finally mastered the five elements divine light. This was the sign of the initial success of the five elements divine escape. From then on, he wouldn't drown in water, burn in fire, and be unhindered in metal, stone, earth, or wood. The only flaw was that it was a little too eye-catching. Time was pressing, and he couldn't delay any longer. He immediately began to practice the hallucination escape. The five elements divine escape had the small world in his body as a guarantee, so he could enter the state so quickly. This hallucination escape might not be so easy. After a few days, the progress of the hallucination escape was indeed very slow. Li Qingshan pushed it to the extreme, but his figure was just a blur, not to mention using it with the five elements divine escape at the same time. If this continued, he wouldn't be able to catch up. He frowned and came up with a plan. He went to the foot of the volcano, found a smooth stone wall, and began to carve. Soon, a distorted, weird, and ugly statue appeared in the cave. It doesn't look like it. Li Qingshan took a few steps back, looked up and down, and murmured to himself. A gust of wind blew, and Gu Yenying appeared in front of the cave. "What the hell is this?" "The realm of freedom," Li Qingshan said sternly. "How does it look like it?" Gu Yenying was stunned. "Why did you carve this?" "To invite the god." Li Qingshan put his palms together and looked pious. Gu Yenying's hand landed on his forehead. "You're not crazy, are you? Go away, don't delay my cultivation." Li Qingshan waved her hand away. If the five elements divine escape was based on the small world, then the hallucination escape was based on the Freedom Heaven book. If he wanted to master the hallucination escape quickly, he had to master the Freedom Heaven book as soon as possible, or at least reach a higher level. This was a more difficult task, but there was a shortcut. That was the God-vanquishing spell of the Holy Scripture School. In Li Qingshan's words, it was inviting the God to possess you. In the records of the Canon School, there were many such examples. A person who was dying of illness suddenly recovered, a mortal suddenly gained infinite divine power, a fool suddenly became enlightened, and so on. It was simply convenient, fast, easy, and brainless. Although the success rate seemed a little small, and the records were half true and half false, he still had to try. Maybe he would succeed. With such an impious thought, Li Qingshan began to recite the Holy Scripture to the statue. Generally speaking, don't you need to kneel to invite the god? Gu Yenying looked at him, standing there, not looking like a believer at all. If you want to kneel, kneel. Don't talk nonsense. Help me catch a fish. Before Li Qingshan's voice died away, Gu Yenying's figure flashed back, holding a colorful, lively big fish in her hand. A fish like this. Bang! Li Qingshan stepped with his right foot, and a small round altar rose in front of the statue. He asked Gu Yenying to throw the fish on it, and then he began to pray. Freedom Heaven, although I am not your believer, we are kindred spirits. Why don't you just accept this fish and give me something in return? Gu Yenying put her hand on her forehead, not to mention inviting the god. She couldn't even fool a ghost so casually. Will you be punished by the god? Chapter 1443. Gu Yenying couldn't help but become serious. Could it really work? However, after a while, there was no change except for the big fish that was still struggling tenaciously. Li Qingshan stopped chanting the Holy Scripture, and the illusion immediately vanished. The statue in the cave was still as ugly as ever. It stood there motionlessly, not dancing at all. He spat. I knew it was useless. He had to admit that it was stupid of him to try everything he could think of in a moment of desperation. That's not what you said just now. Gu Yenying smiled, but she couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. With his personality, If he really succeeded in inviting the gods, the consequences would be unimaginable. Let's go. Li Qingshan turned around and walked away, giving up on this wishful thinking. If he could not master the phantasm evasion skill, he could only use the normal invisibility skill to keep up appearances. The sky was very dark, and the smoke and dust from the volcano covered half of the sky. The magma emitted an orange glow from the scorched earth, and the river was also dyed yellow. The island, which was originally full of birds and flowers, now looked like a demon's lair. Rumble! A bolt of lightning illuminated the world, stirring up a gust of black wind and pouring rain. The deep grotto in the rock wall became darker and darker. The statue of Mahesvara was only a vague silhouette. It was not ugly, but majestic. Gu Yenying suddenly realized that Li Qingshan's sculpting skills were not bad. The statues in the cave were actually very charming, but he was too lazy to sculpt them. He probably did not expect to succeed. If praying to the gods and Buddha is useful, then what's the point of cultivation? Just as he was about to turn around, the eyes of the statue suddenly lit up, as if it had come to life. It stared intently at Li Qingshan's back. The sky grew darker and darker as the wind and clouds surged. The rainstorm was like a waterfall, and the forest was like waves. A bolt of lightning struck the colorful big fish on the altar. In an instant, it turned into ashes. It was as if the god who stood at the top of the 3,000 worlds had accepted this ridiculous offering. Gu Yenying said, "Be careful." "What's wrong?" Li Qingshan also felt that something was wrong. When he turned around, his eyes met with the statue of the heavenly Lord of Freedom, and his body stiffened. The volcanic island, the dense forest, and the wind and rain had all disappeared. In a trance, he was standing in front of an incomparably majestic altar. It was as if an entire mountain had been carved out of it. And there was a sea of people at the foot of the mountain. Their appearances and attire were all different. There were men and women, young and old, rich and poor, noble and lowly. As far as the eye could see, there seemed to be no end to them. It was as if all the living beings in the world had gathered here and were all kneeling before him. No, not to him. On the altar at the peak of the mountain stood a statue that was even more majestic than the mountain. It looked down at him. He gently asked, "Why aren't you kneeling?" Li Qingshan panicked. It was as if he had returned to his childhood in his previous life, where he was caught by his parents for making a huge mistake. He quickly lowered his head, but there was still a trace of dissatisfaction in his heart. "Qingshan." Gu Yenying saw that Li Qingshan seemed to have lost his soul. He looked at the statue of the great freedom god with his head down and said, "Oh no, this kid is making trouble again." She flew forward and grabbed him, wanting to take him away from this place. However, he did not move at all. It was as if his feet were rooted to the ground. She had inherited the feather of chaotic heaven, so her speed was extremely fast. However, her strength was far from being comparable to that of Li Qingshan. On the peak of the mountain, the statue of the god uttered a questioning sound. It seemed a little strange, but it was not angry. Li Qingshan raised his hands. He suddenly realized that he had become smaller. The power of gods and devils had all disappeared. He was only a mortal standing here, and a weak child at that. He felt a wave of panic in his heart, and his legs trembled slightly. The people at the foot of the mountain were enraged. "Kneel." The sea of people and billions of living beings roared together. The heaven and earth shook. An invisible force pressed down like a mountain. Even with the powers of gods and demons, it was difficult to resist. Rumble! In the thunderstorm, Li Qingshan staggered and fell to the ground, like a collapsing mountain. The moment he was about to kneel on the ground, his hands turned into hooves, and ox horns grew on his head. He turned into a strong and powerful oxen. Its eyes were red with anger. With a loud moo, its bent hind hooves stomped hard, and its front hooves crushed the altar, and it rushed toward the cave. Boom! It crashed head first into the statue of the great realm of freedom. Crack! A crack spread from the foot of the mountain to the whole peak. Once again, the volcano erupted violently. Lava surged and flowed. The mist and rising black smoke mixed together into a pot of porridge. Lightning flashed back and forth, creating a strange and dazzling scene. Shaoan rushed over, only to see the black ox that Li Qingshan had transformed into lying on the ground, panting heavily. Gu Yenying patted the ox's back. "Are you fine?" Li Qingshan shook his head, feeling extremely tired. Little and squatted down and gently stroked the ox's head. "Is the great realm of freedom really here?" Gu Yenying asked. An ugly and crude statue, and a random scripture could summon such a god. Oh, right, there was also a fish. "I don't know." Li Qingshan shook his head. Just now, when he was about to fall, he looked up and saw his own face on the majestic statue. He couldn't help but suspect that it was the work of the Yin demons again. But there seemed to be an external force, or else it wouldn't have happened so suddenly. At this time, the boiling lava spread quickly, and he could vaguely see the broken face of the great realm of freedom's statue being devoured by the lava. Gu Yenying waved her hand, and a gust of wind and rain extinguished all the lava and mountain fires. She smiled and said, "I heard that the mount of the world of freedom is a great white ox. You are so strong. Don't let him take a liking to you and make you his mount. But this is good too. Not to mention the true dragon Ao Xian, even the demon god Qiongqi can't do anything to you." Shaoan added, "All the heretical sects that believe in the Mahasvara have a similar saying. On the back of every cow, there is an incarnation of the Mahasvara, and they bring him to travel around the world." Li Qingshan felt that there was really a weight on his back, and he shivered. He quickly turned back into his human form, straightened his back, and stretched as if he wanted to shake off the incarnation of the great realm of freedom. But he didn't believe in this saying. At least, there would never be something like the great realm of freedom on the back of a particular ox. And he knew more about these legends than them. Many sects revered the sacred ox. When it was necessary to remove the statue, it was not to be smashed by hand, but to be trampled by the calf. The devout believers believed that the great realm of freedom wouldn't mind his beloved animal trampling on him. Then he thought of the statue of great freedom that he had smashed to pieces earlier. Li Qingshan shook his head and tossed these ridiculous thoughts out of his head. This time, he had gone for wool and come home shorn. Not only had he failed to benefit from it, but he had almost suffered from chi deviation as well. Little, and it's better to be a man. Don't walk the path of evil. But we're not men. Gu Yenying comforted him. "Qingshan, don't be too impatient. We can just wait until your strength is fully recovered, and then we can fight Ao Xian." Huh. Li Qingshan casually practiced the heavenly tome of freedom and discovered that he had actually broken through before he knew it, and the effects were rather prominent. Regardless of the reason, it proved that the inviting a god to possess you really was effective at the very least. He immediately pulled himself together. "No, I need even more offerings and better statues." Gu Yenying said. Chapter 1444. Li Qingshan began to seriously follow the procedure the Holy Scripture School used to offer sacrifices to great freedom. He became more and more focused as he recited the Holy Scripture. Shaoan even provided him with a group of skeleton demons in white robes, serving as sacrifices to one side. And it turned out that it was really useful. Thus, a group of skeletons was formed, and they came to support him every time. The statues he carved became more and more magnificent, and the offerings became larger and larger. The scene in the illusion became clearer and clearer. The cries of living beings and the pressure of the gods seemed to be real, constantly testing his will and courage. Then, at the last moment when he couldn't hold on any longer, he turned into a stampeding bull, trampling over the altar, destroying the statues, and stopping the sacrifice. This scene looked very strange to outsiders. Surrounded by a group of ferocious skeletons, a man with no sincerity prayed to the statue for a while and stood there motionlessly. Then he suddenly turned into a raging bull and smashed the statue into pieces. Then he fell to the ground, panting. During the process of the sacrifice, Li Qingshan felt more and more tired. Every time, he felt like he was going through a tough battle, and all his spiritual energy was drained. But he only chanted for a while. How the essence, qi, and spirit disappeared was still a mystery. It seemed that the real sacrifice wasn't the messy seafood products, but himself. The grace of the gods was like the ocean, and the power of the gods was like a prison. The realm of freedom was hard to predict. Perhaps there was only a thin line between luck and misfortune, but at least for now, he was still lucky. His understanding of the Book of Freedom was increasing day by day. Of course, this process wasn't like he just sacrificed some seafood, and the gods rewarded him with some power. The realm of freedom probably didn't like eating seafood that much. Every time he sacrificed, he would use an extremely dangerous method to personally come into contact with the true realm of freedom. It was as if staring at the light that could blind one's eyes and receive enlightenment. But enlightenment couldn't replace cultivation. So enlightenment was just enlightenment. His cultivation didn't advance by leaps and bounds. It was just that he would have fewer bottlenecks in his future cultivation, and he would be able to use his own power more freely. And that was enough for him. Tao was the source of power, while techniques were only the use of power. Even though the phantasm escape art was amazing, it was still just a spell. As Li Qingshan's comprehension of the Tao of great freedom grew deeper and deeper, his advancement sped up ceaselessly. It could be said that he was progressing at a tremendous pace, and it wouldn't be long before he would achieve initial success. Qingshan, it's about time, Gu Yening reminded. Li Qingshan was simultaneously activating the 5 elements divine escape art and the illusion escape art. He first transformed into a beam of 5 elements divine light. Then it gradually disappeared into the air. Can you see me? Of course I can. Gu Yening shrugged and pointed at her own eyes. Those were already sharp eagle eyes. After fusing with the feathers of chaos heaven, they already had some of the power of the Kuan Peng. She could clearly see Li Qingshan's figure. Li Qingshan then looked at Little and blinked and looked left and right. Ah, where are you? Her clear and ethereal eyes clearly reflected Li Qingshan's appearance. All right, I give up. Li Qingshan showed himself. It wasn't that the phantasm escape art was unreliable. It was just that the two of them were too powerful. There was no need to mention Gu Yening. Little N's cultivation of the path of white bone and great beauty allowed her to dispel various illusions in the first place. Unless the opponent's cultivation was far higher than hers, illusions were practically impossible to hide from. Even the fox of the Green Hills, Sumi Rao, had suffered at her hands. That Ao Xian is known as the Golden Eyes Profound Dragon. If you can see him, he can probably as well. Sigh, there's still too little time. Li Qingshan rubbed his chin and muttered to himself. Suddenly, he made up his mind. I'm going to make another sacrifice. Are you certain? Gu Yening asked. Last time, the sacrifice was complete. After the last sacrifice, Li Qingshan finally crawled up from the ground after a long while. His mind was rather muddled. Little and also showed a worried expression. However, he did not dissuade her. Yennying helped me catch a big fish. The bigger, the better. Little and the white bone sacrificial group. Get ready. Li Qingshan looked towards the north and smiled. That kid has a bad temper. Don't let him wait too long. Since they had agreed to travel the same path and fight side by side, they naturally had to help each other and work together. As such, he slowly drew his ending frenzy blade. The blade flashed like water, and the blade patterns were like flowers. He looked back at the frozen volcano. Leaping up, he swung his blade downwards. His figure flew through the air as the blade flashed, cutting rocks and breaking rocks. Rumble! Large chunks of rock fell as smoke and dust billowed. A while later, he returned to the foot of the mountain. Calming himself, he stood with his blade. The smoke and dust slowly dispersed. A blurry silhouette gradually appeared on the volcano. It vaguely resembled the realm of freedom. He sat with his legs crossed with a serene expression. Looking down at the sea from high above, he seemed to be in a trance, and the scene in the illusion overlapped. Li Qingshan took a deep breath and prepared for the last sacrifice before the battle. He stomped his right foot, and a huge altar with a circumference of hundreds of meters slowly rose. It was no longer a circular mound. All the runes and totems required by the scripture faction were carved on it. Whoosh! A sudden gust of wind swept away all the clouds in the sky. A patch of green cloud flew across the sky and cast a shadow over the entire island. The dazzling sunlight outlined the shape of a huge bird. Its sharp claws grabbed a giant whale and threw it onto the altar. Boom! The ground shook. Li Qingshan put his palms together and began the last sacrifice. Gu, Yennying, and Little and waited nervously at the side. Man and God faced each other. Lava rolled in the belly of the mountain and flowed through every crack. It was as if blood was flowing all over the body. The mountain suddenly came to life. Its eyes were like lightning as it stared at Qingshan. The runes on the altar flickered. A beam of light shot up to the sky. The giant whale turned into ashes, revealing its white bones. Li Qingshan entered the illusion again. However, the god on the peak of the mountain was nowhere to be seen. The mountain under his feet was also much smaller. He was standing straight on the mountain. All the living beings were howling. They were not cursing, but worshiping him. They bowed their bodies and bowed their heads, worshiping him with great respect. Suddenly, he realized that he was that god. A great feeling of joy surged into his heart. He could not help but spread his arms and shouted, "I am the realm of freedom." All the living beings raised their heads. There were men and women, young and old, but they all looked like Li Qingshan. Their faces were full of reverence. Li Qingshan was shocked. He stepped on nothing and fell into an endless abyss. Laughter came from all directions. "Qingshan, Qingshan!" A familiar and anxious voice was calling him. He slowly opened his eyes and felt a splitting headache. His internal organs felt like they were on fire. He was surrounded by rubble and lava. Little and what happened to me? You cried out, "I am the realm of freedom," before running headfirst into the volcano. Afterwards, the mountain collapsed and the ground cracked. You became like this. Really? Does that count as success? Li Qingshan murmured. The feeling of fear and falling in the illusion was still clear and intense, making him uneasy. Gu Yenning suddenly said, "Qingshan, behind you." Li Qingshan turned his head and looked over, but he could not see clearly. He then summoned a piece of the spirit turtle's profound shell to use as a mirror. All he saw was a statue of the realm of freedom on his back. It was blurry, but it was extremely charming. It sat with its legs crossed and smiled. It did not seem like a tattoo. It seemed more like a birthmark. Chapter 1445. Li Qingshan raised his eyebrows and waved his hand, tearing his flesh. Fresh blood gushed out, distorting the deity statue. The wound healed immediately, and the deity statue returned to normal. He said in a low voice, "Little and use fire." Little and hesitated for a moment, then spread his fingers and pressed on Li Qingshan's back. The samadhi flames of white bone surged and attacked, cutting off all the flesh on his back before stopping. Li Qingshan sat cross-legged and activated the Qilin's supernatural power. After a long time, his flesh and blood regenerated just now. The deity statue also regenerated, and it seemed to be even more lifelike. Li Qingshan frowned. What did he mean by inviting the deity to be naked? In the end, it became inviting the deity to be possessed. Moreover, it's easier to invite the deity than to send it away. Little and asked with concern, "Are you feeling unwell?" Li Qingshan shook his head. Other than feeling unhappy, he did not feel unwell. However, the path of cultivation was about controlling the body and mind without losing the slightest detail. It was probably not a good sign that such a thing appeared on his back out of nowhere. More importantly, he did not know if it was an accident or if it was a necessary part of cultivating the Book of Freedom. As the first person to cultivate the Book of Freedom, there were too many unknowns. Gu Yenying reminded, "It's about time." The rain poured down, the wind howled, and the waves on the sea rose and fell like mountains. Li Qingshan made up his mind. Forget it. The important matter is more important. He calmed his anger and looked up at the sky, silently praying, "Mahesvara, oh Mahesvara, if your spirit is really here, I hope you can lend me a hand. I will repay you in the future." There was no response from the deity statue, and he did not know if it received him. "I will go check out the Xianming cave abode. Be ready to receive me." Li Qingshan sat down and unleashed his Yin demon. He used the divine escape of the 5 elements first before using the illusory demon escape. After concealing the 5-colored brilliance of the 5 elements' divine light, the Yin spirit gradually disappeared and became invisible. Gu Yenying and Little and nodded and said, "It's about time." Yin spirits were originally ethereal and elegant, and were good at hiding. Yin demons cultivated from the unfettered heavenly book were even more so. However, he did not know whether it was because he had the help of the gods or because he had a deeper comprehension. Li Qingshan tossed aside all distracting thoughts, and the Yin demon followed the wind into the rainy night. He flew toward the Xianming cave abode. The Xianming cave abode led straight to the bottom of the abyss. Ao Xian was lying cross-legged in it, deep in thought. He did not know what happened to Lin Xian in the 9 states, but he was unable to return. He had no choice but to make his own plans. The Myriad Manifestation sect definitely wanted to take back the dark nether cave abode, but without the eldest senior brother, the sect could be said to be without a leader. Even if the next eldest senior brother was chosen, he might not be able to do anything to him. The ones who had the ability to expel him were none other than the 4. The supreme sect master was a 9 heavens true immortal, and he would hardly descend. Not to mention, Spirit Venerable Guihai almost never left the 9 heavens. And the 2 sect masters were traveling above the 9 heavens, and they would not care about these small matters. They would not ask for it, only because of their old relationship. He could stay in the cave abode and continue cultivating. When he passed the 6th heavenly tribulation, he could travel the world, and maybe he could become a spiritual venerable. However, when he thought of what happened not long ago, he felt uneasy. It was shrouded in a layer of haze. He interrogated the Azura of the Rahu clan, but did not get any useful information. It was not strange. Even a normal Azura would be hard to deal with, not to mention a Rahu. If he wanted to be happy, he could only kill him. But when he thought of this, he remembered the cruel words left by the rock, and this Rahu was so fearless he might have a way to be reborn in the Asura realm. With his bloodline, it was not impossible for him to pass the seventh heavenly tribulation. If the Rahu clan's status in the Asura realm was taken into account, maybe he would not have to wait that long, and they would immediately send someone to take revenge. The assassins of the Asura realm were famous in the six realms, and that would be endless trouble. He could not help but feel that it was a problem, so he could only suppress him in the ice prison. Logically speaking, he should have investigated the matter to get to the bottom of it. However, he felt that he was about to be swept into a whirlpool, and he felt uneasy. 10,000 miles away, the wind and rain were gloomy, but the Xianming cave abode was bright and clear. In the depths of the sea where the wind could not blow and the moonlight could not shine, the Yin demon moved stealthily and stopped far away from the shore. He could vaguely see a crisscrossing network covering the entire Xianming cave abode, and it was constantly changing. According to the diagram, the Xianming formation had a total of 9 layers, both inside and outside, and they were all connected. The bottom was connected to the eye of the sea, and the top was connected to the clouds. If he could not break through the core in one go, he would be attacked from both inside and outside, and he would die a horrible death. If Ao Xian noticed him, he did not need to do anything himself. With just a thought, he could crush the Yin demon. Li Qingshan took out the Xianming formation plate, not daring to let his guard down. This was pretty much the only thing he could rely on to deal with Ao Xian. If the Yin demon was destroyed, he could refine it, but if he lost the formation plate, who knew when he would be able to save Little Ming? He circled around the outermost circle of the Xianming formation, and at the same time, he analyzed it. Because the formation was constantly running, having the diagram didn't mean that everything would be fine. Until he found the weakest part of the formation, and he snuck in. The closer he got to the inner layer, the more profound and complicated the formation became. At the same time, he had to maintain the 5-element escape and illusion demon escape technique, and one could imagine how much mental energy it consumed. The closer he got to the Xianming cave abode, the closer he was to Ao Xian. Even with the formation plate and diagram, it was like walking on a tightrope on a 100,000-foot cliff. However, at such a time, Li Qingshan's mind became clearer and more focused. Even if it was important and dangerous, he was not nervous or afraid at all. From the deep sea to the shore, he went from water to earth and traveled with ease. Finally, he got close to the Xianming cave abode. The entire mountain peak was filled with spiritual energy, and any random stone he dug out was a high-grade spirit stone. Also, it was permeated with Xianming qi and almost turned into frozen earth, which was 100 times harder than steel. Li Qingshan gave it a slight attempt. Even though he was most skilled at moving through the earth, his speed was extraordinarily slow. Before he could even find Xiaoming, he would probably run out of energy and be crushed to pieces in the mountain. He had no choice but to retreat. He used the old method of searching all over the mountain and finally found a natural crack in the mountain range. However, the crack was so small that even an ant couldn't crawl in, and he still had to use his escape technique. Fortunately, he was prepared and took out the 9 heavens living soil with great care. This was the most valuable treasure he had, and if he lost it, it would be a great loss. He was also like a gambler who was driven into a dead end. He had bet almost all of his chips. Using the power of the 9 heaven living soil, he slowly expanded the crack to the size of a pinky finger, and the Yin demons seeped in like water. There was no special prison in the Xianming cave abode. Ao Xian sealed Luo Ho Xiaoming in the Xian ice and placed him in a random stone room. He thought that out of sight, out of mind, but He didn't expect someone to be able to sneak in. With a light crack, an undetectable crack on the top of the stone room expanded slightly as if it was naturally frozen. A gust of cold wind blew past, and Li Qingshan stood silently in front of the Xian ice. At this moment, Ao Xian opened one of his eyes, as if he had sensed something. To be continued. Chapter 1446. Cold air filled the air, and frost started to form. Luo Ho Xiaoming's eyes were tightly shut, as if he was in a deep sleep. Li Qingshan walked closer to the ice, and when his fingertips touched the surface of the ice, a bone-piercing chill went through his Yin spirit. He quickly retracted his hand and tried to use telepathy. Xiaoming! Xiaoming! However, even telepathy could not penetrate this sturdy ice prison. If he forcefully broke it, Ao Xian would definitely be alerted. With a thought, he took 2 steps back and stared at Luo Ho Xiaoming in the ice. His right index finger and middle finger overlapped, and he pressed them between his eyebrows. A demonic thought shot out from between his eyebrows, ignoring the obstruction of the ice and piercing into Luo Ho Xiaoming's eyebrows. In an instant, the scenery around him twisted and changed, and he flew backward. The boundless blood-colored land spread out, and the sky was vast and boundless. Li Qingshan was overjoyed. I'm in. This was the most basic technique in the secret scroll of inner demons. Normally, it was not very useful. The key to controlling inner demons was to be unpredictable and to attack when the enemy was unprepared. It was too stupid to pose in front of the enemy, but it worked wonders at this moment. This should be Xiaoming's sea of consciousness. But where is he? Li Qingshan covered his mouth with his hands and shouted, Xiaoming! His voice reverberated across the vast land. He had just shouted when a familiar voice came from behind him. Turn around! Li Qingshan turned around, and a boy stood high up on a giant rock. The boy pulled the slingshot in his hand and pointed it at him. The moment he turned around, the bullet whizzed past his face. Li Qingshan was unmoved, and he asked, Why did you become smaller again? Idiot, this is my sea of consciousness. How did you get in? If Luo Ho Xiaoming was not very confident in his cultivation, he would have suspected that he had developed demonic thoughts in the desperate situation. Actually, it was almost the same. Li Qingshan raised his eyebrows. I went through so much trouble to save you, and you call me an idiot the moment we meet. That's not good. What a joke. Why would I need you to save me? Luo Ho Xiaoming said proudly. Li Qingshan's mouth twitched, but he tolerated it since Luo Ho Xiaoming helped little, and fine, I'm here to ask for help. Luo Ho Xiaoming nodded in satisfaction. He put down the slingshot and sat down. That's more like it. Li Qingshan said sincerely, Great God, little Ming, please help me kill Ao Xian. I can't do it. Little Ming Luo dug his ears. Li Qingshan shook his head. Then stop boasting. Just stay put obediently. When the time is, Luo Ho Dragon said. Luo Dragon, Luo Ho Xiaoming clenched his fists. That evil dragon thought that it could seal him, but it didn't understand the true power of the Luo Ho race. He could also gather power. Even though it was much slower, as long as he was alive, he would continue to grow stronger. When is the time ripe? When you have the ability to attack the abode, Luo Ho Xiaoming said solemnly. According to his calculations, they would need to go through at least 5 heavenly tribulations before they would have a chance if they worked together. Li Qingshan smiled. Then the time is ripe. What? Luo Ho Xiaoming was shocked. Don't act rashly. Don't worry, I've already obtained this abode's formation disk. In the abyss, Ao Xian opened his eyes, and his dragon body suddenly moved. He swam into a pitch-black waterway and arrived in front of the prison cell in the blink of an eye. With a loud bang, the stone door opened. A huge dragon, head peeked in with bright eyes. Luo Ho Xiaoming was still sealed in the ice. The spacious and dark stone room was silent. Li Qingshan was nowhere to be seen. Ao Xian's eyes shot out 2 beams of golden light. He scanned the surroundings, but did not find anything. He muttered to himself, was it an illusion? Just now, he clearly felt that an outsider had entered. But after thinking about it, he felt that it was unlikely. Passing through the 9 layers of the Xianming Formation and the frozen earth, and avoiding his senses. It was almost impossible. No direct disciple of the Wanxiang sect could do it. It was even more impossible for others. This was the Wanxiang sect's territory. He laughed at himself for being too paranoid recently. He turned around and returned to the abyss. He, who had been hibernating in the Xianming cave abode, did not know that the Wanxiang sect had obtained another heavenly book, and the first cultivator of this heavenly book. He also obtained the formation disc of the Xianming cave abode and became the legal owner of the abode. In the Xian ice, Luo Ho Xiaoming's lips curled up. Bits of power gathered from the depths of the void. Ao Xian returned to the abyss. Just as he took a nap, a sharp voice pierced through the abyss. Ao Xian, come out! A Kuan Peng circled in the sky. With a flap of its wings, strong winds howled and huge waves crashed against the frozen earth. It froze and shattered instantly, turning into ice shards. Ao Xian was furious. He flew into the sky and glared at the Kuan Peng. It's you. I didn't look for you, but you came to me to die. Gu Yening shouted, hand him over and I'll spare your life. Otherwise, I won't let you go. Ao Xian was so angry that he laughed. I'd like to see how you'll spare my life. 2 beams of golden light shot out from his eyes and shot into the sky. Gu Yening quickly dodged. In the blink of an eye, Ao Xian had already pounced on her. This time, Ao Xian's speed was not as fast as before. In fact, it looked a little slow. One could see the movement of each scale clearly. Unfortunately, she was also more ambitious than capable now. Her speed could not keep up with her eyesight. Therefore, without hesitation, she rode the wind and flew into the sky. Ao Xian calmed down and had doubts again. She has just gone through 5 heavenly tribulations. Why would she dare to come here? Also, the white-bone descendant is nowhere to be seen. Could it be that she's plotting something? After going through 5 heavenly tribulations, even if he did not know divination, he had a keen sense of fate. Not to mention the dragon race, which was a natural deity. Therefore, he chased for thousands of miles and turned back. He decided to take his time to think. However, just as he returned to the cave abode, Gu Yening came to him again. She scolded, "What a 4-legged snake! You're so scared that you're hiding in the cave again. But it's no wonder. My race has always fed on dragons. It's in line with the principle of mutual promotion and restraint. It would be strange if you weren't afraid of me." Li Qingshan and Little and hid far away in the dark, waiting for an opportunity. Yes, not bad. You have 30% of my skills. Gu Yening also felt carefree. It was great to be a Kuanping. The other party's cultivation was far above hers, but he could still provoke her calmly. No wonder Qingshan liked to do that. Cough, if you're afraid, quickly let her go. Don't wait for me to skin you alive. If I don't tear you into pieces today, I won't be able to vent my hatred. The veins on Ao Xian's forehead throbbed. No matter what kind of plot it was, he turned into a beam of light and broke through the sky. His speed was even faster than the Kuanping. In the blink of an eye, the two disappeared between the sea and the sky. This is my chance. Li Qingshan turned into a beam of 5 elements divine light and dove into the deep sea. He quickly approached the Xianming cave abode and easily found the gap in the Xianming formation. He did not need to hide his tracks anymore. He passed through 9 layers of formations and arrived at the foot of the mountain. He found the natural crack. Although the crack was narrow and difficult to pass through, it was not just the Een demon this time. He held the 9 heaven-living soil tightly and activated the bull demon prowess. He punched. Chapter 1447. Dong dong dong. Li Qingshan tapped on the ice 3 times, not fearing the coldness at all. Compared to his main body, the Een demon was just too weak. With a crack, the crack spread and the ice shattered. Luo Ho Xiaoming broke out of the ice and stood in the shattered ice. He didn't know what to say. Li Qingshan patted his shoulder and smiled. "No need to thank me." Luo Ho Xiaoming waved his hand away. "Scoff, you don't need to do anything. I can still break free." "That's right, but how can we be trapped in the hands of insects?" Li Qingshan passed the heaven and earth bag and the slingshot to him. "There is still a long way to go. Help me out." "Sure." Luo Ho Xiaoming smiled, raising his right arm and clenching his fist. Darkness covered the stone room, surging towards him like it was real, melting all the ice that stabbed into his body. The weird sound of bones growing spread out. His body stretched out. His chest was wide and thick, his arms long and strong. He was like the most perfect creature in the world, born to fight and kill. His eyebrows were like sharp swords, and his eyes were like fierce stars. Vengeful energy gathered within. His handsome face instantly became vicious, but there was a hint of divinity in it. It was like he was going to use boundless divinity to slay all demons. The 4th heaven tribulation was the first fruit of Buddhism, the roots of celestials. To him, who was already a god, it was the first step of his strength recovering, and he was starting to regain the looks of a god. He stretched and muttered to himself, "Right, there is still a long way to go, so how can I stay here for too long?" At the same time, 10,000 miles away, a green cloud and a dark cloud flew across the sky. The rock's wings were like the clouds, and it flapped lightly. The astral wind surged, and it flew for 1,000 miles. This was the first time Gu Yenying had spread his wings to the maximum after going through the tribulation. He flew for 10,000 miles across the ocean, carrying the sky on his back as he looked down. It was a boundless ocean, vast and boundless. His body and mind were incomparably free, and he almost forgot that he was being pursued. However, the dragon was like lightning, soaring into the sky, riding the clouds and riding the mist. Its speed was even faster. Gu Yenying glanced back. Ao Xian closed in quickly. As expected, I still underestimated his strength. Although a Kuan Peng can control astral winds, a true dragon can gather clouds. The longer it flies, the thicker the clouds will be, and the faster it will be. If it goes on like this, I'm afraid they'll catch up with us soon, which will be detrimental to Green Mountain's plan. However, she had just passed the 4th heavenly tribulation, while Ao Xian was close to the 6th heavenly tribulation. It wasn't just a difference of one major realm. To be able to maintain such a distance, this was the innate ability of the Kuan Peng. It was extraordinary. "Slut, stop right there." Ao Xian scolded harshly. His eyes shone with golden light. However, before it got close to the Kuan Peng, the light dimmed. His flying speed was simply too fast for spells to catch up. "Ha! This dragon is indeed not very smart. Let me play a trick on him." Gu Yenying suddenly flapped her wings, which were as wide as the clouds, at the same time. A strong wind arose, and her huge body turned back with the help of the wind. The sky was below, and the ocean was above. She passed by Ao Xian. Ao Xian raised his head in surprise and said disdainfully, "Insignificant tricks." He twisted his body and turned his dragon head around. He was more agile than Gu Yenying, and he shortened the distance between them. Gu Yenying smiled faintly. The fierce general flapped his wings again, and a strong wind howled. The two strong winds intersected and formed a whirlwind between the ocean and the sky. Ao Xian was caught off guard during the turn and was instantly sucked into it. Although he was unharmed, the clouds around him dispersed a lot, and he slowed down a lot. He scolded angrily, "Despicable!" Gu Yenying laughed and left. "Thank you for the compliment." Under the illumination of the sky, Li Qingshan looked up. The deep cave cut the sky into a circle, and under his feet was a large lake. The lake water led straight to the abyss of the sea, and the waves stirred by Ao Xian had not yet subsided. This was the center of the Xianming cave abode, and according to the formation map, it was also the core of the Xianming formation. As far as the eye could see, it was empty, and there was no trace of the formation eye. This was another mysterious part of the Xianming formation. It was to prevent the most extreme situation, such as when an enemy sneaked in and wanted to destroy the operation of the formation. The core of the formation was hidden so deeply that it could not be seen, and naturally, there was no way to destroy it. It was like a secret room that only the owner could open, and ordinary people could not enter even if they guessed the location. Li Qingshan was prepared, and without hesitation, he activated the Xianming formation plate, and waves of ripple-like light rippled out. In an instant, thousands of rays of light and countless mysterious runes appeared in the empty cave and gathered from all directions. They intertwined and condensed into a dazzling ball of light, which was reflected in Li Qingshan's eyes. The ball of light was divided into 9 layers, and it rotated slowly, affecting the thousands of threads and countless runes to control the entire Xianming formation. "This is it." Li Qingshan was delighted. At this stage, it was not difficult to destroy the entire formation, but his goal was not just that. He wanted to become the new owner of this place. Finally, it was the most crucial moment. This ball of light was like an extremely complicated treasure chest. Although he had the key and understood the structure, he had to crack the password set by the original owner if he wanted to obtain the treasures stored inside. Using force would only destroy the treasure chest along with the treasures. When Ao Xian returned, all his previous efforts would be wasted, and he could completely set up a new mountain guarding formation. Then he would completely lose this Xianming cave abode, and he would have to bear a huge debt for nothing. When he could break the formation and defeat Ao Xian in the future, he might not need this cave abode anymore. This was his only chance. As a result, he was not in a hurry to act. He stared at the core of the formation, and his expression became calm and indifferent. His eyes became as deep as the ocean, as if he was not in enemy territory, as if everything had nothing to do with him. Spirit turtle transformation. He turned into a huge turtle and slowly sank into the lake. Immediately, the waves calmed down, and the lake became as smooth as a mirror. It clearly reflected the ball of light, the thousands of threads, and the countless runes. Begin derivation. The ball of light in the water gradually spun faster. The threads crisscrossed, and the runes flickered, changing rapidly. It was a stark contrast to the slowly spinning ball of light above. The so-called password was definitely not just a few numbers. Instead, it was necessary to understand the operating mode of the entire formation, as well as find the imprint of the original owner that was imprinted deep within the core of the formation. If he could not erase the imprint in time, Ao Xian could instantly change the operating mode of the entire formation as soon as he sensed it, even if he was thousands of kilometers away. If that happened, all his previous efforts would be wasted. Time passed bit by bit. A prayer bead jumped out of Li Qingshan's bosom and turned into a skull. It cackled. "Qingshan, she can't hold on much longer." Li Qingshan suddenly turned into a human and leapt out of the water. He used the ape demon arms and grabbed at the ball of light in midair. Not only did the other party want to sneak into the abode to save people, but he also wanted to seize control of the Great Formation and become the owner of the Xianming Cave Mansion. Because all the abodes were the property of the Myriad sect, Lin Xian had handed over his array board to the sect before he reincarnated. But that array board was not something that outsiders could touch. The Myriad sect, it's a disciple of the Myriad sect. If it was an outsider, what was the point of seizing the abode? Everything had an explanation. This was a conspiracy from the beginning. Ao Xian glared at Gu Yenying. He turned and flew back to the Xianming Cave Mansion. Gu Yenying wanted to chase after him and delay him, but she felt numb and powerless. Her wings, which were as light as a cloud, suddenly became extremely heavy. She had already exhausted her energy, but she did not notice it in the intense flight. She circled in the sky a few times and had no choice but to land in the sea. The originally white eagle feathers had turned dark green and completely melted the heaven-mixed feather. But after coming into contact with the sea water, the feathers suddenly turned into a whirlwind and whizzed away. Her heart skipped a beat, and she hurriedly flapped her wings, wanting to fly up. Her wings, however, became clumsy and powerless because of the metamorphosis of the feathers, stirred up even more seawater. Her wings were soaked by the seawater and turned into a gale that hit the water for 3,000 miles. With a boom, her huge body fell straight into the sea and turned into a big dark green fish. It was called Kuan. Gu Yenying swung her tail clumsily, and with a whoosh, a huge wave rose to the sky. The transformation of the Kuan Peng must first become a Kuan, diving into the sea and waiting for the gale, then become a Peng, carrying the blue sky and flying through the clouds. A dove bird could only fly a few feet and stop at an elm, so it did not have to go through this process. But an eagle wanted to fly, but it had to risk falling off a cliff and being smashed to pieces, let alone a Kuan Peng. Gu Yenying was originally an eagle, and after obtaining the Heaven Chaos Feather, she gradually turned into a Kuan Peng. She first spread her wings and gained some of the bearing of a Peng, but she was still not a true Kuan Peng until she passed the fourth heavenly tribulation and used this power to the extreme, completely merging it into her blood and soul. Exhausted, she entered the sea and turned into a Kuan. Sigh of all times. Gu Yenying did not know whether to be happy or sad. She said helplessly to a skull prayer bead, "I've encountered an accident. I'm afraid I can't return in time." Then she used all her strength and swung her tail. She leaped, creating millions of splashes. With a boom, she dove into the sea and swam in the direction of the Xianming cave abode. Little and nodded slightly. Her white kasaya and blood sea banner danced together. In an instant, a thick blood color spread out from under her feet. The waves turned red and turned into a sea of blood, killing all the fish and turtles. Then she slowly pulled out the Buddha's slaying sword. The image of white bones could be vaguely seen in her beautiful face, and a red mole between her eyebrows was clear. Behind her was the Xianming cave abode. There was no reason to retreat from this battle. Between the sea and the sky, the dragon returned to its lair. The blade of the sword gently slashed in front of her. The sea of blood filled the sky, cutting off her way back. Countless skeletal ghosts rode the rushing blood waves and surged toward Ao Xian. With a wave of her left hand, the skull prayer beads scattered. Just now, she looked up, her ethereal eyes blazing with fire. Ao Xian was shocked. "It's you." Then, who was in the cave abode now? Not only did she obtain the formation plate of the Xianming cave abode, but she was also able to enter the cave abode in such a short time, break the Xianming formation, and erase his imprint. The sea of the mountains that were the most familiar to him was now covered by the sea of blood, as if an unknown monster was hiding there. The skull prayer beads in Li Qingshan's arms had already turned into powder when they entered the light ball. In the abyss, there was dead silence. A voice urged, "Wake up. Now is not the time to sleep." With a flash of red light, Li Qingshan opened his eyes. He realized that the voice came from the Yin demon in his heart. With a long roar, he got up from his broken body and stepped down. The earth cracked, the mountains shook, and the dragon lake collapsed. 2 golden stars flashed and were already swallowed by the golden light. In an instant, Zhu Yan's flesh and blood evaporated, revealing white bones. They also started to soften as if they would melt at any moment. However, the flames in her eye sockets were still the same. She muttered, "Qingshan." At this moment, a roar sounded, "Ao Xian." The somewhat familiar voice caused Ao Xian to look up. Luo Ho Xiaoming stood at the peak of the mountain, the slingshot in his hand drawn to the limit. A black sun and moon appeared in each of his eyes. The boundless darkness swallowed all light. Ao Xian felt a sharp pain in his left eye. One of the golden light suddenly disappeared, and he was blinded in one eye. The remaining golden light was also quickly swallowed by the darkness. An invisible force grabbed Little and pulled her back into the mysterious underworld cave abode. She fell into Li Qingshan's arms. Seeing her miserable appearance, he couldn't help but be furious. He said coldly, "Little Ming, lure him in." Before he finished speaking, Luo Ho Xiaoming was also hit into the abyss and slammed into the rock wall. He was almost smashed into a pile of flesh. He pointed up and said, "He's here." The sky darkened. A dragon's head reached into the cave. Its dragon claws dug deep into the frozen mountain rock. A single eye met Li Qingshan's red eyes. Ao Xian's power was almost unparalleled. Only Luo Ho Xiaoming could really hurt him. Instead, he was completely enraged. His murderous intent was like a dark cloud covering the sky. He wanted to immediately pounce down and kill them all. However, he saw Li Qingshan stretch out his right arm and reach into a bright light ball beside him. The core of the formation condensed as if it was solid. "Who are you?" The low, hoarse voice was filled with murderous intent. Its huge body slithered into the cave like a snake. Li Qingshan kissed Little N's forehead and let go of her. He faced Ao Xian alone and announced loudly, "I am the master of this place." Ao Xian said angrily, "Let go of your filthy hand. I am the master of this place." "Ha, you are just an old guard dog. How dare you call yourself master? What did you say?" Ao Xian's expression became even more ferocious. "Oh, I am sorry. Comparing you to a dog is really unfair to a dog." Ao Xian suddenly pounced down. In the blink of an eye, his sharp dragon teeth were inches away. At the same time, Li Qingshan pulled out his hand from the light ball. The condensed light ball immediately stretched out. This process was so fast that time seemed to freeze. The crisscrossing light and runes affected the 9 layers of formation inside and outside. Once again, it became invisible. However, deep in the core, there was already his mark. It was a totem of a bull's head. The mysterious underworld formation was reactivated. Time resumed its flow. Ao Xian's figure was frozen in midair. He was no longer the master of this place. "I am willing to surrender. Spare my life." Li Qingshan hesitated for a moment before smashing his fist down. Boom! Ao Xian's eyes bulged, and blood spurted out of his mouth. The sound of his skull cracking could be heard as he fell straight to the bottom of the abyss. Li Qingshan raised his right hand and used the earth force field to pull Ao Xian back. "What did you say?" Ao Xian said weakly, I I am willing to surrender. He was heavily injured, and he was completely suppressed by the Xianming formation. He no longer had any strength to resist. Just now, if not for Li Qingshan holding back at the last moment, he might have been smashed to death in his nest. Li Qingshan said curiously, "Why are the dragons of the human realm so spineless? Even the Dragon King of Ink Sea, a dragon king in a painting, is much tougher than this guy." That's probably because of the 5 absolutes immortal. Little N was collecting the scattered dragon scales, dragon teeth, and dragon blood to heal his damaged bones. Li Qingshan nodded. That makes sense. A warrior can be killed, but not humiliated. If you don't want to surrender, then kill me. Ao Xian closed his eyes angrily, but left a gap to observe. Chapter 1450. I'm doing this. Li Qingshan waved his arm proudly. He only wanted to hear Ao Xian's last words and did not want to keep the dragon as a pet. The difference in their strength was too great. Today, he only managed to subdue Ao Xian because of the suppression of the Xianming formation and the surprise attack. Even so, he maintained the state of ox demon transformation, at all times ready to throw a punch at any moment. If he let the dragon return to the mountain because of a moment of carelessness, it would be too late for regrets. However, from what Luo Ho Xiaoming said, he might really be able to subdue Ao Xian. He smiled and asked Little Ming, aren't you afraid of being doomed eternally? Humph, I'm not following you. We just happen to be going the same way, Luo Ho Xiaoming said proudly. However, he knew that from the moment he fought alongside Li Qingshan, there was no turning back. It was not as simple as returning to the Azura path to take revenge. Moreover, he did not want to turn back. As a bloodthirsty and warlike Azura divine child, he would regret it if he missed out on this great massacre. I've already guessed your origins. Sai, this is fate. What else can I do? Ao Xian said pitifully. After confirming that he was in big trouble, he seemed to have admitted defeat. Li Qingshan grabbed the dragon's horn and waved his fist. I still think this guy is unreliable. Why don't we kill him and feed him to Little and yes. Little and nodded. Dragon blood and dragon scales tasted great. Spare me. You must be reliable. Ao Xian hurriedly begged for mercy, and he'd completely thrown away his last bit of backbone. To a certain extent, he was rather flexible. Don't worry, I have a way, Luo Ho Xiaoming said. Little dragon, are you willing to be my mount? Ao Xian said flatteringly, Yes, I'm willing. Being the mount of the exalted god is my dream. Be careful of the backlash, Li Qingshan reminded. If they were able to subdue Ao Xian, then the benefits would naturally be much greater than killing him. However, their current strengths combined were still inferior to Ao Xian, so once he found an opportunity to bite back at them, then they would be idiots to the extreme. Very well, then don't resist. Luo Ho Xiaoming grinned hideously as he walked forward. He cut open his right palm and pressed it on the dragon's head. Blood, chi, and darkness spread at the same time, enveloping Ao Xian. Ao Xian immediately struggled, his dragon body stirring the lake, causing waves to surge. He had been looking for an opportunity to counterattack, and it was perfect for him to become a mount. It was impossible for the weak to control the strong, regardless of whether it was through magical treasures or spells. There was a way to break it. However, he had forgotten one thing. The other party was no ordinary cultivator, but the Rahu god race. Since ancient times, they had inherited a set of methods to subdue mounts. Amongst them, the one with the strongest controllability was this dark blood contract. It used the purest god's blood to connect their powers and fuse their bloodlines. Li Qingshan stepped hard on the dragon's head. What You still dare to resist. Ao Xian tried his best to resist Luo Hoshaoming. His expression became ferocious again. There's one thing you have to tell me. Otherwise, I would rather die than submit. Li Qingshan said, What is it? Did you guys kill Lin Xian? Ao Xian questioned. This was purely a kind of intuition. He felt that he shouldn't have died so easily, unless he had encountered an unfathomably strong enemy, such as these people in front of him. Li Qingshan and looked at each other. Chu Tian was killed by Qian Rongji because he was heavily injured in a fight with Li Qingshan. Lin Xian was killed by Qian Rongji because leaked the secret. Of course, the latter was just speculation. It really couldn't be said that it had nothing to do with them. Then they shook their heads together. Definitely not. Is that so? Ao Xian was doubtful. Li Qingshan swore calmly. If I was the one who killed him, may the heavens destroy me, and I die a horrible death. All right then. Ao Xian closed his eyes and finally submitted. He allowed the divine blood to enter his body. The dragon blood was like boiling magma. He knew that Luo Hoshaoming was taking revenge, so he could only lower his head and endure. A moment later, Ao Xian opened his eyes again. Under the effect of the Rahu god's blood, his blinded eyes had completely healed. They flickered with golden light and were brimming with vigor. A black sun and moon were reflected in each of them, and the dragon scales on his body became even darker. Luo Hoshaoming took a few steps back. His face was pale, and he looked very weak. Ao Xian, our grudges are written off. If you are willing to serve me as your master, I will not mistreat you. If you want to betray me, you will be burned by the flames of karma. Ao Xian bowed his head. Yes, master. Just now, the battle had come to an end. Ao Xian couldn't do anything else. Li Qingshan touched his chin. I suddenly remembered that I also have a mount. It's time to summon him and let the 4 heavenly kings reunite. Where's our wind-watching heavenly king? The ocean current was not smooth. Gu Yenying, who had turned into a big fish, was tired from swimming and floated on the vast sea. So slow. Her voice was like a whale's song. When she finally returned to the Xianming cave abode, after a long journey, Li Qingshan had already started to check the spoils of war under the guidance of Ao Xian. The master of this Xianming cave abode was indeed the eldest senior of the Myriad sect for many years. He was much richer than Chuolong. Among them, there were 12 heavenly tomes, the True Dragon Heavenly Book, the Purple Mansion Heavenly Book, the Cloud Furnace Heavenly Book, and so on. Although they were only a small part of the Myriad Heavenly Book, they contained all aspects of cultivation. For example, the True Dragon Heavenly Book focused on body refinement, while the Cloud Furnace Heavenly Book focused on alchemy. They were probably prepared for reincarnation, although they weren't of much use to him. If they were in the 5 continents world, any one of the heavenly tomes could establish a large sect. If they were gathered together, they could establish a small myriad sect. It was very suitable for his grand plan of national cultivation. Thinking about how it would probably cost nearly 10,000 green jade lots to buy these heavenly tomes in the heavens, he felt that he had made a huge profit. There aren't many treasures. He cultivates the True Dragon Heavenly Book and doesn't really care about these external objects. Most of them are given out as rewards, so he only keeps a few to admire and play with occasionally. Ao Xian explained. How could eldest senior brother Lin not have any savings? Why would he worry about debts after getting such a windfall? He then dived into the dragon's stomach and took out the dragon pearl. It was clear and deep like the ocean, yet it was dim as if it was covered in a layer of dust. However, one could clearly feel the majestic power contained within. This is mine. Li Qingshan vaguely felt that this dragon pearl would be of great use to him, so he carefully put it away. Come up, I have something to say. The few of them followed Li Qingshan back to the abyss. Sunlight shone down and rippled. Li Qingshan stood on a protruding stone platform, raised his hands, and announced in a loud voice, "Friends, comrades, from today onwards, this is our base in the human realm." Clap, 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 clap. There was a round of applause, but unfortunately, only Little N responded. Gu Yenying asked, "What do you want to say?" Li Qingshan said matter-of-factly, "To show off your merits, of course." "All right." Li Qingshan patted his chest. "First of all, you have to thank my wise leadership." Gu Yenying immediately raised her hand. "I'm going to cultivate." She turned into a giant Kuan and jumped into the abyss. Luo Ho Xiaoming held his forehead, then walked away silently. "Hey, I'm not done yet. It's your turn to praise." "Me?" Little N blinked. "Of course." Li Qingshan grinned. "Forget it. It's their bad luck if they don't listen. I'll just praise you." He praised Little N from top to bottom. In the empty cave, on the rippling surface of the water, only his voice echoed, mixed with her bell-like laughter. From time to time, she would add, "What else?" Their cooperation was very tacit. Gu Yenying thought helplessly, "I wonder just who's the one spoiling. Who?" But after going through so many twists and turns, she could finally relax. This was an excellent place for cultivation, even better than Chulong's Dragon Pool cave abode. It was also safer. It was also directly connected to the ocean, very suitable for cultivation. So she closed her eyes and recovered her strength. She dreamed of the day she turned from a Kuan to a Pong and soared into the sky again. Luo Ho Xiaoming had already started cultivating. After undergoing the fourth heavenly tribulation, he was captured by Ao Xian before he could recover his strength. Now, he could finally let loose completely. For him, bottlenecks were almost non-existent. He was getting stronger with every passing moment. Not long after, Little N arrived at the bottom of the abyss and landed on Gu Yenying's huge body. Then they entered the blessed land and faced the huge dragon corpse. Although many Whitebone secret treasures were damaged and needed to be repaired, it was a waste to directly turn the dragon corpse into the Samadhi flames of Whitebone. After some thought, he had an idea. He threw up the 3 burial Dharma robe and wrapped it around the huge dragon corpse. Then he started chanting blasphemous scriptures. Qingshan is about to head to the battlefield in the demon realm. This will be a great help to him. Chapter 1452. Li Qingshan. The direct disciples who were bored to death immediately sat up straight. The culprit who caused them to waste so much time was now outside. Ever since he was sent flying by Liahua's punch, it was as if he had evaporated from the world. No one knew where he went. Some even suspected that he had betrayed them. They didn't expect him to suddenly appear outside the direct inheritance hall. Lu Tian and Pai Yangqiu looked at each other and had the same question in their eyes. Did he succeed? Wan Yaozhu's heart tightened, but she was slightly relieved. Even though she felt that he was despicable, she still hoped that he was safe and sound. Gu Xing frowned and cupped his hands. The direct inheritance hall doesn't allow ordinary disciples to enter, but since he is the person involved, why don't you call him in and see what he has to say? The other direct disciples naturally wouldn't object, but they saw Dai Mengfan's surprised expression as if she had seen something unbelievable. Other than her, the other direct disciples couldn't see the scene outside the direct inheritance hall. The true disciples could not help but become even more curious. Most of them had never seen Li Qingshan before, but even if he had 3 heads and 8 legs, there was no need for the third senior sister to react like that. Right? Dai Mengfan waved her hand. "Open the door." Li Qingshan turned his head and instructed, Be quiet later. I'll bring you to show off. A voice replied, Don't worry. Do you think I'll embarrass you? The door of the direct inheritance hall opened, and Li Qingshan walked up the stairs calmly. He passed through the door and looked around at the direct disciples. He saw that they all had similar expressions, and he couldn't help but smile and cupped his hands. Greetings, senior brothers and sisters. All the direct disciples' eyes were focused on Li Qingshan's shoulder. There was a phoenix standing there, its flame-like beautiful feathers almost touching the ground. However, he didn't even look at them, no matter how powerful they were. She preened her feathers, looking aloof and proud, yet so natural at the same time. Li Qingshan nodded in satisfaction. This kid's comprehension is not bad. You've learned some of my skills. This phoenix was naturally Li Qingshan. After Li Qingshan occupied the Nether Cave abode, he immediately used the heaven-climbing vine to connect the 5 continents and the mortal realm. He summoned Li Fengyuan. Of course, it wasn't just to show off. Li Fengyuan's cultivation was already infinitely close to the 4th heavenly tribulation, and he needed a wider world. Furthermore, he was the king of cooking. Ha ha, you flatter me, you flatter me. I'm far inferior to Big Father. While the father and son were flattering each other, the true disciples understood why Dai Mengfan was surprised. Is that a phoenix? This kid is Li Qingshan. Li Fengyuan wasn't the only one who kept quiet. Li Qingshan also had a humble expression on his face. He was delicate and gentle like a young man, giving people a good impression of him. It was impossible to imagine that he was the traitor who challenged the myriad appearance sect's senior brother and senior sister within a year of entering the sect. The divine bird, the phoenix, was the rarest and most precious mount in the world. Eldest senior brother Lin Xian's mount was just a dragon. The dragon race seemed extremely arrogant, but they were actually very flexible. They could tempt them with benefits or subdue them with force. Having a true dragon as a mount was not a delusion. The phoenix's aloofness and arrogance were deep in their bones. They wouldn't eat unless they were subdued by force. Even if they were subdued by force, they would rather die than submit. There were far fewer phoenixes than dragons. Generally speaking, although dragons were better at fighting, what cultivators needed the most was not power, but lifespan. As long as they had a long enough lifespan, they would always have power, and it would be true power that belonged to them. The phoenix was the mount that could extend a cultivator's lifespan to the greatest extent. Li Qingshan smiled at Wan Yaozhu. Senior sister, I didn't lie to you, did I? Before Wan Yaozhu could speak, the 9-colored deer couldn't help but exclaim, A phoenix mount, it's actually real. Of course, Li Qingshan didn't want to ride anyone, nor did he want to be ridden, except for one situation. He was purely using Li Fengyuan to keep up appearances, and it seemed like the effect was pretty good. Dong dong dong. Dai Mengfan knocked on the table. Li Qingshan, since you're here, do you have any objections to this evaluation? Junior brother Li, if you have any dissatisfaction, you can say it. I will definitely consider it. Gu Xing patted Li Qingshan's shoulder with an affectionate expression. Military orders are like mountains, they can't be changed. However, the law is nothing more than human feelings. It's not impossible to delay for a while. The direct disciples looked at each other. You were the one who personally gave the order to recruit this kid into the army, and now you're pretending to be a good person. However, they didn't know that ever since Gu Xing met Li Qingshan, he thought highly of him and had the intention to resolve their grudges. Later, when Li Qingshan faced Li Liehua head-on, his bravery made people not dare to underestimate him. Now that he brought out a phoenix, his future was practically limitless. So what if he lost a few bets? As long as he didn't die midway, he would have enough time to make a comeback. and he had just gone through 4 heavenly tribulations and could block Li Liahua's full-powered punch. No matter how one looked at it, he wouldn't die so easily. Such a person would have to be out of his mind to become enemies with him for a few hundred green jade. Lots. Li Qingshan said, "Thank you, Senior Brother Ge. I have no objections to this evaluation. However, if I can delay for a while, that would be for the best." Of course. Ge Xing readily agreed. The atmosphere in the direct inheritance hall instantly became strange. The originally intense dispute was instead eased by the arrival of the person involved. The other direct disciples sized up Li Qingshan, and they also became more cautious. To be able to tame a phoenix as a mount, the Wanxiang sect would probably have another direct disciple soon. Wan Yaozhu and Li Qingshan's eyes met. Li Qingshan had never been at a disadvantage in a direct confrontation. Wan Yaozhu didn't know what she was thinking, but she stubbornly refused to look away. Dai Mengfan's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that junior sister's heart is really moved? She originally thought that it was impossible, but after seeing Li Qingshan with her own eyes, she suddenly felt that it wasn't strange anymore. Pai Yangqiu and Lu Tian walked up and asked impatiently, "Is it done?" Li Qingshan smiled and nodded. "Of course it's done." "Really?" Pai Yangqiu still couldn't believe it. How long had it been? And he had already taken down the Xianming cave abode. Li Qingshan took out a jade box and grabbed a bunch of green jade lots. "This is the price of the Xianming cave abode. And the bookmarks I owe you." He took out another bunch and gave it to Lu Tian. "This is yours." Pai Yangqiu and Lu Tian looked at the bookmarks in their hands. Their expressions changed, and they laughed together. All the direct disciples were stunned. It wasn't that they hadn't seen the world, but one had to know. A few hundred green jade lots was already a huge sum. It was extremely rare for thousands of green jade lots to come and go, even among the departments of the Wanxiang sect. Moreover, this was merely a private exchange. Since when did an inner disciple become so generous as to spend more money than them? Lin Xian had been stuck at the peak of the human sovereign realm for many years, and he had been the eldest senior brother of the Wanxiang sect for many years. His status was naturally not something a normal direct disciple could compare to. Moreover, because his cultivation was stagnant, he didn't consume much. He also prepared for reincarnation for many years, which was why he had over 10,000 green jade lots. Li Qingshan relied on the strength of his teammates and various methods to pull the chestnuts out of the fire. Otherwise, even if Li Liahua and Chao Tianjiao worked together to break into the Xianming cave abode, they wouldn't be able to stop Ao Xian from taking the items and escaping. Lu Tian smiled and hooked his arm around Li Qingshan's shoulder. "Junior brother, why don't we write off our bet?" On the high discussion stage, Dai Mengfen shook her head. This was probably the first time in history that a direct disciple had suppressed a group of direct disciples in the direct inheritance hall. No one would believe that a direct disciple and a direct disciple had their arms around each other's shoulders. Moreover, Lu Tian had always thought highly of himself. He didn't even look up to all the direct disciples. Otherwise, he wouldn't have toyed with everyone here. He was practically treating Li Qingshan as an equal. No way. However, Li Qingshan bluntly rejected him. "Once the 30-year limit is up, I will naturally pay you 1,000 green jade. Lots if I lose." "Ah, you really don't give me any face." Li Qingshan closed the jade box. He then looked at Wan Yaozhu and handed the entire jade box over. In an instant, all the direct disciples' gazes were attracted by the jade box. There were at least 2,000 green jade, lots inside. It can't be. What is this kid taking the green jade, lots for?" They had been entangled here for many days for the sake of a sum of 600 to 700 sapphire lots, which ranged from 1 to 200 sapphire lots at most. Now, not only had they not obtained any benefits, but their respective bets had become even more dangerous. However, under Wan Yaozhu's stupefied gaze, the jade box suddenly disappeared. It was stowed away in the Sumeru ring again. Li Qingshan yawned and yawned. "I better put it away." Wan Yaozhu softly snorted and looked away. "However, to thank the two senior brothers for their support, please choose one each." Li Qingshan took out Lin Xian's treasured treasures. They floated in the air and said so. Lu Tian smiled. "I wonder how many people are yearning for these items." Although Pai Yangqiu was tempted, he still said, "You earned them yourself. You don't have to give them to us." "Two senior brothers, you don't have to be so polite. I always repay kindness and hatred. Since I've said it, how can I take it back?" It was not that Li Qingshan was particularly generous. Arcane treasures had always been external objects. No matter how precious these arcane treasures were, could they possibly increase his chances of victory when he fought against Qiongqi? When he had just started cultivating, 80 to 100 taels of silver was very important. Now, it seemed like it was nothing. As long as he kept moving forward, it would be the same. If he stopped, what was the point of keeping it? To die with him? This was where he stood. Life and death were terrifying, but as long as he stood firm, he would have courage. Since these external objects were useless, why not give them up? Then I won't stand on ceremony. If you lose, I'll forget about your debt. Pai Yangqiu and Qiu Letian each chose a treasure. I'm willing to lose. There's no need for that. A true disciple suddenly stood up, pointed at a magic weapon, and said, "Junior Brother Li, I want to buy your 9-dragon seal. Name a price." Without waiting for Li Qingshan to reply, Lu Tian smiled. "Junior brother, if you have no use for these remaining treasures, let me auction them. After all, they are eldest senior brother's treasures. They are very valuable." Li Qingshan said, "Then I'll have to trouble senior brother." Chapter 1453. Since no one has any objections, then this discussion will end here. Judge Li Qingshan to join the battle as soon as possible. Dai Mengfan waved her hand, and all the doors and windows suddenly opened. Sunlight silently poured in, and dust floated in. There was silence in the inheritance hall. All the true disciples had different expressions, as if they had not recovered from the shock just now. An inner disciple had done what they could not do. He took down eldest senior brother's Xianming cave abode and inherited everything. How was this possible? How did he do it? When did Ao Xian become so easy to talk to? It was unbelievable and incomprehensible, but everything in front of them was real. The only logical explanation was that there was external help, and it was an extraordinary power. However, this was the myriad phenomenon sect's territory, and the biggest suspect was Spirit Venerable Guihai in heaven. It was said that every time he went to heaven, he would be personally summoned by Spirit Venerable Guihai. This was undoubtedly the most direct evidence. This kid must be related to Spirit Venerable Guihai. No wonder he dared to be so arrogant when he just entered the sect. Thinking of this, they felt better. When they looked at Li Qingshan again, they immediately felt that he was unfathomable. Spirit Venerable Guihai had always lived in seclusion and would never interact with ordinary people. What was his background? Junior brother, I will give you another month to prepare. This is already the maximum deadline. Gu Xing patted Li Qingshan's shoulder and said, "Sai, if not for the situation, I really can't bear to let a talent like Junior Brother go to the battlefield." Li Qingshan smiled and said, "Thank you, Senior Brother. 1 month is enough." Wan Yaozhu rode the deer and left the inheritance hall alone. She had a bit of a carefree feeling of leaving after the matter is done, hiding his achievements and fame. After walking for a while, she looked back and asked, "Why are you following me?" Li Qingshan followed her from afar. There is one more thing I need your help with. The nine-colored deer said, "Hey, kid, don't push your luck. Do you know how annoying you are? Unless you give us that jade box." Ouch. Wan Yaozhu glared at Ji Yunshu's head and complained, "Even Lu Tian and Pai Yangqiu can benefit from it, but we have to work for nothing." "Why?" Wan Yaozhu ignored her and said to Li Qingshan, "Speak." "I really don't have anyone else to ask." Li Qingshan smiled and pointed at Li Fengyuan on his shoulder. "I'm going to the battlefield soon. Can you help me look after him?" Wan Yaozhu was surprised. "Aren't you going to bring him along?" "It's so dangerous. Why bring him along?" "I want to go too." Li Fengyuan flapped his wings in dissatisfaction. "Cut the crap. We'll talk after you pass the fourth heavenly tribulation. Don't drag me down," Li Qingshan said bluntly. Moreover, the mysterious underworld cave was deep and cold, not suitable for a phoenix to rest in. The herb garden was the best choice. "All right." Li Fengyuan hung his head dejectedly. He had just arrived in the human world and had yet to adapt to the laws of heaven and earth. "Okay." Wan Yaozhu was a woman of few words, but she still agreed. The alley was empty. Wisteria covered the top of the wall. Bright and open. Li Qingshan looked at her, wanting to say something, but hesitating. Wan Yaozhu asked, "Is there anything else?" Li Qingshan said, "I'm a person who pays attention to repaying kindness and enmity, because whether it's kindness or enmity, it's a kind of burden. Whether it's revenge or repayment, it's all to get rid of this burden." Wan Yaozhu said, "So there's no difference between benefactors and enemies to you, right?" "Huh, of course not. Most of my benefactors are living well, and most of my enemies are dead. But if I carry too many things on my back, I won't be able to walk far. Even if a person had the strength to pull up a mountain, they would still be overwhelmed by layers of emotions that were as small as dust. That's why they had to stick to these principles. Killing the enemy with one slash, returning kindness tenfold was good enough. Only then could they walk away with ease. If one day they couldn't walk anymore and fell on the road, they didn't want people to laugh or cry. So you might as well take it." Li Qingshan took out the jade box again. Inside was a huge sum that could even move a human emperor, but now it was like a hot potato that couldn't be given away even if you wanted to. Wan Yaozhu hesitated slightly. The nine-colored deer resisted the urge. After a while, it sighed softly. "Hand it over." Li Qingshan signaled for Li Fengyuan to grab the jade box and hand it over to Wan Yaozhu. Then he placed it on the antler. The nine-colored deer glanced at him, full of joy. It decided not to care about these small matters. "Humph, because you're a phoenix." Li Qingshan was relieved. He cupped his hands, turned around, and walked away in a relaxed manner, preparing for the upcoming battle. Wan Yaozhu held the jade box and looked at his back. She wondered if he would turn around to look at her. If that happened, her mood would be different. However, he didn't. He disappeared at the end of the alley. Suddenly, she felt a little disappointed. "Jiu Air, the path of cultivation is really lonely." The nine-colored deer said, "Yes, he is a natural cultivator, a person with a heart of stone." Li Fengyuan said disapprovingly, "Nonsense." Wan Yaozhu smiled gently and asked, "What's your name?" "I'm Li Fengyuan." "Li, is that his surname?" Wan Yaozhu asked curiously. "Of course, that's my first father," Li Fengyuan said proudly. "Father?" Wan Yaozhu laughed in surprise. At the same time, in the sky, Spirit Sovereign Guihai saw everything, including the guesses of the people in the Legacy Hall. He looked at Wanxiang City, leaving and disappearing into the vast ocean. He felt emotional. It was not that he was fickle, nor did he have no desires. However, he was able to let go and not be shackled by any shackles. Such a temperament was rare. It was no wonder he was chosen. The wind started at the end of the green duckweed and stopped at the grassland. Deep in the mountains, there were dragons and snakes, and heroes emerged from the grassland. Changes were about to happen, and it was difficult to escape the calamity. The 7 great sages would never admit defeat, and no one could completely destroy them. The so-called suppression was just a truce. The 9 heavens gods and Buddhas were probably well aware of that. This child was probably born in response to the calamity. It was time to inform Master. Spirit Sovereign Guihai came to the highest level of heaven. Moments later, the myriad image array formation that enveloped Wanxiang City suddenly stopped circulating. All the spiritual power gathered towards the sky. The pearl at the top of the building suddenly emitted a light more dazzling than the sun. A beam of spiritual light shot into the clouds, breaking through the samsara barrier and sending a message to the 9 heavens. Everyone in the city looked up in shock. No one saw this scene with their own eyes, so they did not know what was happening. Only the legacy disciples just now understood that Spirit Sovereign Guihai was sending a message to the 2 sect masters and even the Grand Sect Master. As the samsara laws were just too powerful, even immortals who were beyond the 6 paths and not within the 5 elements would be greatly affected. However, it was even more surprising. This was because unless it was an extremely urgent situation, such as the sect being invaded by external enemies, such a situation would only happen. However, that chaotic era had passed tens of thousands of years ago. It was almost impossible for the Wanxiang sect to be invaded again. But other than that, what else could compare to the sect being invaded? Spirit Sovereign Guihai looked up into the sky. Let Master make the decision. Should he betray this kid? Chapter 1454. A month later, Li Qingshan arrived at the supply department once again. Gu Xing received him personally and brought him to the teleportation hall. He glanced at the basket on his back in confusion and asked politely, "What did you bring, junior brother?" "Treasure." Li Qingshan smiled brightly. Gu Xing became even more curious. What could he call a treasure that could not be stored in his Sumeru ring? However, he did not get to the bottom of it. He showed equal respect and raised his hand. The teleportation formation shone brightly, and a door condensed from light slowly opened. "May you be victorious and prosper, junior brother." Li Qingshan nodded slightly and stepped through the bright door. Gu Xing rubbed his chin. If he went over, there would probably be another fierce battle. Suddenly, he shook his head. If it were anyone else, entering the dangerous battlefield of the demon domain and being viewed as enemies by those 2 at the same time, it would be extremely difficult for them to stay alive, let alone fight. However, he did not sense any fear from him at all. Instead, he was in high spirits, as if he was ready to take part in an interesting game. As a result, even Gu Xing felt that he would never allow himself to be trampled upon. When Li Qingshan emerged from the teleportation gate, he was already millions of kilometers away. The sky was gloomy and gloomy, as if he could touch it with his hand. Heavy snowflakes drifted down. When he looked up, the snowflakes seemed black against the background of the dark clouds. The cold air was filled with the faint smell of blood. Taking a deep breath was refreshing. Li Qingshan, a guard wielding a metal halberd, asked. "Yes, the commander orders you to report to the Blaze Hall immediately." "All right, come with me." The halberd guard turned around and left. Li Qingshan frowned and followed. was that bastard Li Lieh was so impatient that he wanted to deal with him immediately. As far as the eye could see, mountains rose and fell, and rivers stretched for thousands of kilometers. This black cloud city was built on a tall mountain. It was surrounded by a chain of barracks and walls. The two sect masters of the Myriad sect had personally modified the terrain of the earth within a radius of several hundred kilometers, forming a roaring formation of black cloud thunder. This was where the name Black Cloud City came from. It was one of the strongholds that defended against the demon folk. It had never fallen since it was built. Currently, 2 legions directly under the Myriad Appearance sect were stationed there. The commanders of the Blazing Inferno Army and Xuanwu Army were Big Senior Brother Li Liehua and Big Senior Sister Chao Tianjiao, respectively. They also recruited 86 troops from the countries under the Wanxiang sect's rule. They claimed to be an army of 1,000,000. Just like Wan Yaozhu in the Bailu country, the shadows of the direct disciples could be seen in all countries, serving their interests. The larger the country, the more troops it could conscript, the more contribution points and bookmarks they could exchange for. If not for Wan Yaozhu, a small country like the Bailu country would have long been annexed by the surrounding countries. This was not a battle between cultivators or sects, but a war between 2 worlds. No one could stay out of it. Basically, every demon folk was a soldier, even though a human emperor could easily slaughter hundreds or even thousands with a single technique. However, this might allow the demon emperor to seize the opportunity. It became the key to deciding life and death. And quantitative change could lead to qualitative change. Military formations composed of armies were enough to shake even the toughest formations. The flesh and blood of dead demon folk would pollute the ground, and the evaporating demon chi would blot out the sky. If they did not deal with it, it would turn into demonic soil. This was how the demon domain used the flesh and blood of all demon folk to constantly expand their territory. Even the demon emperor and demon emperor were not stingy. In other words, the demon emperor and demon emperor were the survivors who had been eliminated in this cruel environment. It was impossible for a group of cultivators to contend against the human path. They were forced to borrow the power of mortals. The 1,000,000-strong army had not been roped in randomly. Instead, they had been selected through a strict selection system. They were the elites of the elites, chosen from billions of people. Every single one of them possessed great martial arts and had undergone the harshest training. Otherwise, they would not be able to fight against demon folk. Before Li Qingshan set off, he had gathered all the relevant information. In particular, the 2 commanders Li Liehua and Chao Tianjiao possessed unbelievably great authority in Black Cloud City. Military orders were absolute. They could not be reasoned with or reasoned with. Whatever they said was law. Even if they were clearly sending him to his death, he still had to go. Otherwise, he would be defying military orders. He would be captured immediately and delivered to the Myriad sect for punishment. He could even be executed first and reported later. Without a doubt, this situation was extremely disadvantageous to him. The only thing worth rejoicing over was that the 2 of them rarely stayed in the city at the same time. At the very least, one of them would be stationed in Black Cloud City, while the other would either leave the city to attack demon folk or return to the Myriad sect to recuperate. Otherwise, he would probably be screwed over by the 2 of them at the same time. Thinking up to there, Li Qingshan sniggered. He had already arrived in front of the Blaze Hall, a gray stone hall that stood as tall as a sword. "Commander, I've brought Li Qingshan." The guard with the iron halberd knelt down on one knee. "Let him in." Li Liehua's dignified voice rang out from inside. Li Qingshan curled his lip and strode in. In that moment, he sensed over a dozen hostile gazes. Li Liehua sat high up. A huge map hung behind him. The mist and clouds drifted about on the map, displaying the scenery within a range of 500 kilometers in real time. However, there was a large region of darkness above him, as if it was obscured by something. The generals stood to his left and right, either resting their hands on their weapons or standing with their hands behind their backs. They were all brimming with murderousness. None of them were kind. Li Qingshan stood in the center boldly. "I'm here." "How dare you?" An armored, bearded man gripped his sword firmly. His eyes widened in anger as he bellowed thunderously. Li Qingshan bowed slightly. "You're too kind." The bearded man was about to step forward when Li Liehua waved his hand. Chapter 1455. Senior brother, if there is nothing else, I will go back and prepare. Li Qingshan cupped his hands and turned to leave. Thud! Li Liehua suddenly asked, "What are you carrying?" This was the question all cultivators would have when they saw it. The basket was made from ordinary vines and wasn't a talisman or weapon. What couldn't be put into a sumeru ring? Yet they couldn't feel any signs of life from it. Treasure. Li Qingshan still answered. Li Liehua wasn't as easy to talk to as Gexing. "Open it and see." Li Qingshan said, "Is this a military order?" "What do you think?" Li Liehua wasn't polite. Li Qingshan placed down the basket on his back and opened it slowly. Everyone's gazes gathered over, only to see a white skeleton curled up in the basket. They couldn't help but be disappointed. What kind of treasure was this? This really was Li Qingshan's treasure. It was the only person in the world that he was willing to carry on his back. Since he dared to come, he was already prepared for the worst. That was to fall out with Li Liehua. It didn't matter if you were an army commander or eldest Shixiao. When a man is angry, blood splashes. He had to show the true face of a demon. Millions of troops and Wanxiang sect weren't useful. Life and death could be decided in an instant. She would stab out with the most fatal sword. But since Li Liehua only wanted to trouble him with a dangerous mission, he didn't need to be in a hurry to act. A mission that was incomparably dangerous to others was a piece of cake to him. And if he wanted to quickly earn contribution points and become a direct disciple, the fastest way was to earn military merits. To encourage disciples to participate, the Wanxiang sect gave high rewards, especially in terms of contribution points. No one could deny it. So Li Liehua and Chao Tianjiao, who wanted to compete for the position of eldest Shixiao, were active on the battlefield. They left third Shixiao, Dai Mengfan, far behind. She didn't even qualify to compete. Back then, Lin Xian had gone to the demon realm many times and killed demon emperors before becoming the eldest Shixiao of the Wanxiang sect. The group of direct disciples were afraid that Li Qingshan would improve too quickly in the 100 Herb Garden. Throwing him into the infernal domain battlefield was simply like releasing a tiger back into the mountains. Not to mention becoming a true disciple. Even becoming the eldest senior brother was not impossible. At that time, he would like to see the expressions of Li Liehua and Chao Tianjiao, these two bullshit big senior brothers and big senior sisters. Li Liehua felt like there was a fishbone stuck in his throat, but he had nothing to say. Although he could always find a reason to maliciously make things difficult for others, it went against his temperament and path. He was going to become the senior brother of the Myriad Appearance sect. To be able to kill with one's fists and suppress others with great power, one must not be too despicable. Li Qingshan carried the basket on his back and walked out of the gate under the gazes of the generals. "Senior brother." The curly-bearded man stepped forward again, his armor clanging. "This brat is too rude. I'll go and kill him. My Wanxiang sect is not a demonic sect. We don't practice such tricks. Since he is willing to obey my orders, Then let him be. As for harming Li Qingshan's body while his Yin spirit was out of his body, he had never even considered it. If he wanted to deal with an opponent of lower status and weaker cultivation, he would have to take advantage of the situation and kill them secretly. Then there would be no need for him to practice the heavenly tome of fire, and there was even less of a need for him to become the first senior brother. Just like how the golden demon domain constantly expanded across the 3,000 worlds, the battles against the human realm became more and more intense and intense. Even human emperors and demon emperors struggled to move freely. Once they entered battle, they would face the risk of dying. And where the human realm and demon domain intersected, the laws of the world overlapped and became chaotic. The powers and techniques of cultivators were suppressed further, so it was nothing strange for powerful cultivators to die to the hands of regular demon folk. The curly-bearded man spat viciously. Tui, this brat has only just arrived. He hasn't seen the world yet, so he doesn't know what war is. I'd like to see just how long he can last. The generals all agreed with him and cursed furiously. This brat is like a girl. Don't faint from fright when he sees corpses strewn across the ground. He's just a lucky bastard. When I tore apart the demon emperor with my own hands, who knows where he was drinking milk? Wasn't it all thanks to my mountain-splitting slash that you were able to tear apart the demon emperor with your bare hands? As he spoke, it became boasting about his military achievements. It couldn't be helped. When this group of people gathered together and didn't have anything serious to do, this was almost a fixed program. It was already a noble person who couldn't help but say it. All of them were veterans who had fought their way out of mountains of corpses and seas of blood. He naturally had a kind of contempt for ordinary cultivators. Even though we have the same level of cultivation, I can easily kill you. Naturally, I look down on you. Not long after Li Qingshan entered the Myriad Phenomenon sect, he became an inner disciple, occupied the Xianming cave abode, and obtained the vast amount of resources left behind by Lin Xian. They didn't know how many dangers they had gone through to reach this step, but they still didn't have a decent cave abode, and they never had enough resources. How could they not be jealous? Li Qingshan walked out of the fiery hall. The heavy snow was still falling, and the mountains were still the same. The voices behind him were like the buzzing of flies. He chuckled and threw this group of successful people to the back of his mind. As for other aspects, Li Liehua still gave him the treatment that an inner disciple deserved. A lonely gray stone tower overlooking the entire black cloud city served as his place of cultivation. There were many such towers in Black Cloud City, and they were like gray swords pointing to the sky. Surrounding the top of the mountain was a strange-looking iron tower that pierced the clouds. That was the core of the roaring thunder cloud formation, called the Lightning Guiding Tower. The tower was equipped with the most basic formation, but its main function was to gather spirit chi. As a base of the roaring thunder cloud formation, it had a certain degree of defensive power, but mainly to keep out the cold. Li Qingshan climbed to the top of the tower. The wind and snow howled outside, but the inside of the tower was as warm as spring. However, it was empty with nothing inside. Everyone who could live here had a Sumeru ring, so they brought their own things. Li Qingshan had also prepared some, at least enough wine and meat. However, he wasn't in a hurry to decorate the room. Instead, he put down the basket and bent down to open it again. A pair of straight, snow-white arms stretched out and wrapped around his neck. Her empty eye sockets turned into a pair of rippling eyes, and her white teeth covered her red lips. She was smiling and talking, her body stretched out like a paulownia tree, and her white bones and muscles grew. She had already transformed into a stunning beauty. We can kill that Li Liehua if they were facing him head-on. Even if they joined forces their chances of winning were slim. It was even more impossible in Black Cloud City. As the commander of the army, Li Liehua could control the roaring thundercloud formation. However, a life-and-death battle was completely different. Li Qingshan only needed to use the living soil of the Nine Heavens to activate the gravity and suppress Li Liehua for a moment. With little and sword, Li Liehua wouldn't be able to escape death. He wouldn't even have time to react. The Buddha-slaying sword wasn't that easy to take. Li Qingshan smiled. Of course, none of us can kill him. However, it's not the right time yet. Let's keep him alive. I'll be going to the demon domain sooner or later, so I can take this opportunity to investigate the situation. At the very least, I need to know how to get to Mount Qingqi. Yes, Little and hugged him tightly. Li Qingshan could also feel her emotions. After going through so many hardships and being separated so many times, the two of them were once again together. No matter how dangerous the road ahead was, walking with her was her home. The monk in front of him was obviously one of them. Li Qingshan glanced at him from afar. He felt that nothing good would come out of meeting a monk, so he continued forward. Suddenly, a Buddhist light swept past his body. It was harmless, but his back was faintly hot. A strong killing intent erupted from his heart. He wanted to kill this monk. He was alarmed. What's going on? Even when he faced Chao Qianjiao just now, he did not feel like this. Not to mention the fact that he had no grievances with this monk, but he probably could not kill him either. The monk was currently prostrating on the ground when he sensed something. Suddenly, he raised his hand and bellowed. "Which demon dares to spy on us here? Why don't you show yourself?" Li Qingshan shuddered all over. His escape technique had been destroyed, and he showed himself. The feeling of disgust deepened. The monk's face was completely sunken. He brought his palms together and chanted aloud, "Namo Amitabha." Li Qingshan was tempted to ask, "Do you know anything else?" A towering Buddha statue appeared behind the monk, vaguely sitting on the clouds and looking down at him benevolently. Li Qingshan could not help but recall the feeling he felt when he fended off the huge Buddha statue in the Chan monastery of Devanaga many years ago. His entire body turned numb, unable to resist. He felt an urge to drop to his knees and prostrate himself. His back became hotter and hotter, scorching like fire. He was filled with killing intent. A thought flashed through his head. Damn it, this is probably still because of the heavenly tome of freedom. Sure enough, nothing good comes out of meeting a monk. Chapter 1458. The Een demon that was as handsome as a god rapidly shrunk like it was leaking air. The black sun beneath its feet receded as it rolled past Li Qingshan, who had returned to his original appearance. The Een demon fell to the ground, on the verge of collapse. However, his eyes were still filled with pride. He grabbed the black, glass-like demon heart and wanted to toss it far away. However, after thinking about it, he decided to keep it. This item contained an unparalleled terrifying power. Even the dragon pearl he found in Lin Xian's dragon corpse couldn't compare to it. The biggest difference was that if he wanted to, he could merge with this power at any time. At the very least, he would become a demon emperor. Pretty much no one could resist the temptation of absolute power. He didn't need to spend any effort, and he could easily change everything. He just needed to relax slightly, and he would be able to kill his way back to Black Cloud City. He would first wipe out that glowing monk, then kill that Li Liehua who was looking for trouble with him. Finally, he would rape that arrogant Chao Tianjiao 100 times. Demon God Qiongqi was still a threat, but as long as he accepted this power, the 6th and 7th heaven tribulations would be within reach. What was there to be afraid of? Everyone could be satisfied, and all fears could be relieved. Who could refuse such a good thing? However, Li Qingshan didn't waver at all. He didn't hesitate to use all his methods to take out the demon heart. That was because many years ago, someone gave him a similar choice. At that time, he had nothing. He just needed to nod his head, and he could have the entire 9 provinces. However, he chose to walk his own path. It was an extremely dangerous and exciting path. From then on, he didn't hesitate for such a choice. This was his pride. If I want something, I will take it myself. He climbed up, facing the wind and snow as he continued forward. At the same time, in Black Cloud City, outside the lonely and desolate stone pagoda, there were many green vines and blooming flowers, attracting many onlookers. Everyone was pointing and discussing spiritedly. Li Liehua looked down and scoffed coldly. This kid didn't leave the city to carry out his mission. Who knew what he was up to? That was the effect of Li Qingshan activating the Qilin's endless growth at the crucial moment. He used the Tao of nature to calm down the restless heart demon. The interior of the pagoda, which was as warm as spring, was filled with blooming flowers and verdant vegetation. Little and asked with concern, "Qingshan?" Li Qingshan opened his eyes slightly and explained the situation. "Qingshan, you mustn't accept it. Otherwise, your Yin demon might go berserk and completely break free from your control. It will become a fusion of the vast freedom heavenly demons divine, your memories, and the demon domain's heaven's will. Not only will these 3 great monsters not benefit you, they might even devour you." Li Qingshan sat in the middle of the lush greenery and smiled. "Don't worry, I'm not that stupid." She plucked an unknown red flower and placed it beside little Anne's ear. "I will always be the Li Qingshan in your eyes." Little Anne lowered his head like a mimosa and said softly, "Just be yourself. If it wasn't for you watching over me, I would be extremely cruel and vicious right now." Although at first, he just didn't want to teach the child bad things and wanted to set a good example for her. In the end, it didn't seem to be of much use. On the contrary, he benefited a lot from it. Under the illumination of the black sun, the vast tundra was cut off by a great mountain. Gales whistled through the valleys. There was a fortress there, facing Black Cloud City from afar. However, compared to the intricate design of Black Cloud City, this place seemed extremely crude, and the fortress was currently littered with corpses, and blood flowed like rivers. Miserable cries rose and fell, echoing through the valleys. Terrifying saber marks crisscrossed each other. They basically covered every corner of the fortress. Not long ago, a woman had trampled over the fortress with a black-furred roar and began a massacre. Demon folk had always been on the offensive, and this place was deep within the demon domain, so they did not place too much importance on defense. There were obviously no protective formations like the black cloud roar of thunder and lightning formation, although there was an army stationed here. Setting up a military formation required time. The sudden attack completely failed to react. The demon king stationed here was the first to be cleaved in half. "Trash! You're all trash!" A huge, vicious beast riddled with wounds roared furiously as it stomped countless demon folk who could not dodge in time into mush. Quite a while later, just now turned into a hideous, vicious man as he panted heavily. An extremely eye-catching slash extended from his forehead to his crotch. His eyes were still filled with fear. If he were not in the demon domain but on the battlefield up ahead or below Black Cloud City, he would have been slaughtered by that slash already. Fortunately, he had demonified immediately, using his huge, tough body to endure the damage and buy himself some time. He could keep the woman running out of energy and retreating on her own. Just now, he managed to keep his life. Even with that being the case, he had almost demonified completely, turning into a frenzied demonic beast. Only after venting for a while through slaughter did his violent demonic heart calm down, slightly. He ground his teeth and said resentfully, "Chao Qian Jiao." Thousands of tortures and scenes of torture flashed through his head, igniting a violent desire. However, his demon king's palace had already been reduced to ruins. Most of the demonesses who provided him with pleasure had been crushed to death inside. His black eyes swiveled around, and he casually grabbed a female demonic beast and pressed her under him. The demonic beast struggled and wailed, while the bold demon folk gathered over to cheer and liven things up. They were amazed by his valiance. Before long, they had surrounded him in layers. Their voices rose and fell, echoing through the gorge and drowning out the screams. They actually recovered some morale. The grotesqueness of the demon domain and the madness and contortions of demon folk would always exceed the imaginations of outsiders. At this moment, the black sun in the sky suddenly lit up, shooting down a streak of black light towards the icy plains in the distance. It lasted for a short while. Everyone raised their heads. Even though not everyone had heard of the legend of the demon heart of the Black Sun before, they were all dazed by it. They felt a strong urge to rush over to where the light had landed. In particular, the demon king, who was currently slaughtering the demonic beasts. He had heard of the legend of the demon heart of the Black Sun before, so he felt an intense temptation. Children of destiny were known as demon seeds in the demon domain. The birth of every single demon seed would lead to slaughter and competition among the nearby demon folk. The demon heart of the Black Sun was enough to drive the entire demon domain into a frenzy. There was another way to understand demon among demons, which was a demon seed among demon seeds. Whoever could devour this demon seed would become the 13th demon god, or even the ruler of the demon domain, the king of demon gods. This was a heaven-sent opportunity. No other demon king was closer to it than he was. Even if the other parts of the demon domain saw the fall of the Black Sun, they would struggle to tell where the Black Sun had fallen. Was this a blessing from the heavens? If it were not for the fear left behind by Chao Tianjiao/, he probably would have charged over already. Just when he was about to run out of patience, a cold, dignified voice rang out. "Tu Wancheng." A black, diamond-shaped crystal rose up slowly from the ruins, hovering in the gorge. It reflected a pale white, featureless face. "What are your orders, Sir Faceless Evil God?" The demon king immediately became humble. He tried to suck up to the faceless evil god like the lowliest demon folk. The faceless evil god completely ignored the messy fortress. He only asked, "Did you see it?" "Yes." The demon king trembled. "Clean this place up. Don't leak the news. You don't move around." "Yes." The demon king broke out in a cold sweat. He understood what it meant to clean it up. In order to prevent the news from leaking, all demon folk who saw the fall of the Black Sun had to die. An army of 200,000 demon folk was stationed in the fortress, including several demon emperors and several dozen demon kings. They were like a colossal beast. Chao Tianjiao's risky ambush this time was mainly to assassinate the demon king, Tu Wancheng, so the casualties were actually very small. Now, they were all going to be slaughtered because of a single order, and the commander had to take action personally. The expressions of the demon emperors changed drastically. They powered their demon hearts and fled as quickly as they could. The demon kings all demonified too, taking advantage of the chaos to flee. Most of them headed in the direction of the Black Sun. Before Tu Wancheng could do anything, the demon hearts of all the demon emperors and demon kings detonated together. Boom, 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 boom. Like a series of claps of thunder. They directly killed over 10,000 demon folk. The valleys on both sides collapsed, and the fortress was completely reduced to ruins. The faceless evil god said nonchalantly, "I'll leave the rest to you. Think carefully and don't move around." Wanching trembled all over. He knew he had not been cleaned up just because he was a demon king. Instead, he valued his experience in this war zone, especially his understanding of the situation in Black Cloud City. He felt another wave of excitement. Black Cloud City was doomed this time. Perhaps he really would have the opportunity to fulfill his fantasies. He would capture that bitch Chao Tianjiao and make him beg for death. Thinking up to there, Tu Wanqing turned into a colossal beast again, and the wails rang out again. The faceless evil god watched all of this silently. To be continued. Chapter 1459. Bitch, bitch. The furious man used the most vicious words to insult her. Little fool. The woman's voice was gentle and affectionate, as if she was caressing the man's face. Do you think I don't know what you're thinking? I'm a roundworm in your stomach. If you want to cross the border of the demon area and return to the human world, you'd better go through Black Cloud City and go directly back to the Wanxiang sect. Let me go back, or I'll die with you. The man's voice became cold. This was not just a threat. Okay, go if you wanna. We're one. How can I make things difficult for you? The woman said obediently, I'll kill a few disciples of the Wanxiang sect to stop you. I won't let you succeed. The man's voice was firm, but there was a trace of fear. Can you stop me? Bitch, bitch. Ha 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 ha. Jia jia jia. He 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 he. On the black wasteland swept by the strong wind, a figure slowly walked from the horizon. The broken cloak woven from gray hemp fluttered in the wind. Only half of his face was exposed under the hood. He kept talking to himself. In two voices, with two expressions, a man and a woman. It was like playing chess with oneself. All the strategies would match and restrain each other, constantly escalate, and finally form a dead knot. It would fall into complete chaos and turn into hysterical curses. The man was furious, and the woman enjoyed it. I must separate, even if it's only the young spirit, even if I have to leave this dragon body to this bitch. The man's thoughts were like those of a husband who was almost crazy after being tortured by his wife. He would rather leave the house with nothing than a divorce. Even the thought of revenge was almost obliterated. You can't escape, you can't escape, you can't escape. The woman repeated it over and over again like a resentful wife, enjoying the pleasure of revenge to the fullest. She felt a great joy that she had never experienced before, and it was not just for power. The man had proposed countless compromises which could be beneficial to both sides. There was indeed no conspiracy. After all, they could not deceive each other. There was a great risk in this twisted state, and it was the same for her. But she could not pretend to agree to play tricks on him. This was the only guest in her hell. How could she let him go, even if they had to die together? He suddenly stopped and raised his head, revealing a handsome face. It had a face that was difficult to distinguish between a man and a woman. A rhombus was embedded in its forehead. 7 colors swirled within it, illuminating the sky. A streak of black light descended from the sky and disappeared into the end of the wasteland. That seems to be the direction of Black Cloud City. The man was shocked. He seemed to be in a certain demon folk market. He had heard of similar legends. Will she be there? The woman muttered to herself. Perhaps this was the real reason why she had allowed him to go to Black Cloud City. You lowly woman, do you really want to die? Ha! If I die, you won't be able to live either. Then, another round of argument ensued. Hanging on their waists, the forsaken immortal sword had never felt so normal before. He couldn't help but miss his previous master, even if she had abandoned him. But he didn't blame her at all, because he knew it wasn't because he hated her. It was a purely rational decision. However, it was wrong of her to throw herself to such a lunatic. Li Qingshan still had no idea how great of a disturbance he had caused. He had read quite a lot of information, so he knew there were many demon seeds in the demon domain, and most of them would die as soon as they were born. He fiddled around with the black glass bead a little more before stowing it away in his Sumeru ring. No wonder demon folk are fighting over this thing so madly. The benefits are just far too great. Ha! Don't tell me someone's going to try and steal my demon heart of Black Sun too. That would be for the best. I'll kill every single one of them. They'll all be food for Little. And, although he knew nothing about the legends of the demon domain, he still named it the Black Sun based on what he saw when the demon heart condensed. Or perhaps it was the will of the heavens. However, he had never imagined that the entire boundless demon domain could see the Black Sun demon heart. The demon folk who wanted the demon heart of Black Sun included the 12 demon gods. The reason why the demon gods did not kill their way over immediately was because they had to deal with the desireless heavenly palace. They dared not act recklessly. More importantly, they were afraid of internal conflict. Their chaotic and evil natures made it very difficult for them to reach an agreement. Under the threat of common interests, they only managed to form an alliance. If they really believed the demon heart of Black Sun could make them masters of the demon domain, then they would definitely end up just like the regular demon folk who fought over the demon seed. There would definitely be an extremely brutal battle between them, and the entire demon domain would collapse. If the desireless heavenly palace launched a full-scale counterattack, they would have to spit out everything they had swallowed. They would not be able to recover even after 10,000 years. Once the demon domain contracted on a large scale, it would no longer be able to contain the 12 demon gods. People would definitely die. After all, legends were still just legends. The demon domain had many, many legends. Even if a small portion of them came true, it was not worth it to give up on the entire advantageous situation and risk death. That would be far too foolish. However, if there was an opportunity to succeed, secretly, they would never let it slip by either. The demon domain was expanding anyway. All they had to do was slightly change the direction of their attacks. Regardless of whether they could find the demon heart of Black Sun or not, uprooting Black Cloud City had always been imperative. They were just bringing the plan forward slightly. Secretly, several dozen demon kings and an army of several million began to mobilize. The eve of the storm instead seemed extraordinarily calm. Li Qingshan's demon patrolled the demon domain in a relaxed and contented manner. Perhaps because he had turned down the demon heart of Black Sun, the circulation of the heavenly tome of freedom became smoother and smoother. Although it did not convert into power immediately, the path ahead became clearer. As it seemed, this heavenly tome really was extremely suitable for him. He basically encountered no bottlenecks when cultivating it. However, it was not like there were no bad things. The great freedom demon statue on his back became even more lifelike and lifelike. He even suspected whether it would turn into a cartoon in the future if this continued. As he patrolled the icy plains, he considered how he should deal with this matter. He could not help but think of the monk from the Pure Land sect, who shone. He asked little, and the great freedom demon statue seems to react very strongly to the monk's technique. I wonder why. The great freedom god was subdued by the Buddha. Can I borrow his power and use Buddha to suppress demons? Little and nodded. We can try. The cultivation method of the Pure Land sect is to recite Buddha's name and pursue rebirth in the Western Pure Land after death. with the profession of reciting Buddha's name as the internal cause, and the power of Amitabha's wish as the external cause, the internal and external correspond to each other and rebirth in the Western Pure Land. Li Qingshan scratched his head. Can you put it more simply? Little and smiled. The Buddha's great wish to use the Mahayana Buddhism to deliver all living beings from suffering is not just for words. Even if it is a peasant, as long as he sincerely recites Buddha's name, he will not fall into reincarnation and can go to the Western Pure Land to enjoy happiness. This is probably the purpose of the Pure Land sect. Li Qingshan expressed his doubts. Is the Western Pure Land really that good? He would be suspicious of everything that came too easily. There is no such thing as a pie falling from the sky. Even if it fell, it would hit you in the face. Shaowen said with a smile, monks don't lie. Do you think Buddha would lie? The word Pure Land is not a lie. Li Qingshan sighed with emotion. If you can get Pure Land by saying a few good words, why do you have to be so tired and cultivate so hard? Zen still needs to see the heart and nature. Tantra needs to be reincarnated continuously, and it can't be done without great wisdom and perseverance. It's not as easy as the Pure Land sect. We really don't need to be very troublesome and tired to become Buddha. Exactly. Therefore, the Pure Land sect is the #1 sect of Buddhism. Its believers are far more than other sections. Its supernatural powers are not inferior, and it is best at borrowing the power of Buddha. It has the magic that other sects do not have. Li Qingshan grinned. The Buddha has prepared everything for you. All you need to do is assume a good posture. Of course, kneeling and licking is also indispensable. However, to be able to go through 5 heavenly tribulations and achieve the Situa Maha fruit, it is definitely not enough to just kneel and lick. It is necessary to know 108 methods, which are patterns of kneeling and licking. No wonder the great freedom god hates the Pure Land sect so much, a group of brainless guys. Therefore, it is very worth a try. What you hate is what you are afraid of. The enemy of your enemy is your friend. When I go back, I will go to the Pure Land Temple and get rid of this great freedom demon elephant. Chapter 1460. Even if you don't threaten me, I don't need you. The Een demons continued to patrol the icy plains. To be honest, this job was actually quite boring. After all this time, he had not even seen a single proper demonic beast, let alone demon folk. He was not nervous or excited at all. Have they all curled up because it's cold? Although he had turned down the demon heart of Black Sun, the demon domain did not reject him at all as someone who had almost become a demon seed. Instead, it allowed him to use the illusion demon escape even more freely. It was even easier than the human realm. Speaking of which, his journey this time was all because of his grievances with his own people. He had not been attacked by demon folk along the way. Instead, he had been threatened and slapped by his own people. And these 3 bastards just happened to be the 3 most powerful figures in Black Cloud City. Sure enough, the greatest enemy comes from behind. Fortunately, I'm a loyal person. If it were someone else, they would have joined the enemy in anger a long time ago. But this is far too boring. Am I supposed to run errands? I still have to find a way to capture a demon folk and ask them how to get to Kinkishan. The information says that demon folk have a large city as well. It just happens to face Black Cloud City from afar. Do you want to take a look? Just a look. Li Yehua did not ask him to investigate either, as that was no different from sending him to his death, at least to regular Een spirit cultivators. Even for him, this was a very dangerous matter. A military fortress with the demon emperor in charge was no easier to deal with than Ao Xian in the Xianming cave abode. Moreover, he didn't have any teammates this time, and his original body wasn't here either. Once his tracks were exposed, the Een demons would definitely be destroyed. However, As someone who would not be comfortable unless he asked for it, he still arrived before the fortress between the icy mountains and valleys. In the wind and snow, he could vaguely make out the 3 large, blood-red words, Cold Blood Pass. Li Qingshan curled his lip. What a Chinibya name! However, according to the culture and customs of the demon domain, cold blood was a compliment similar to despicable, shameless, cruel, and heartless. They were all compliments, so there was nothing strange about it. However, what he found strange was that there was not a single person on the walls. Only the banners fluttered in the wind. The city was deathly silent. There's no one standing guard on the walls. Was the military discipline of the demon folk so poor? But even so, there are at least 200,000 soldiers here. Why is there no sound at all? Isn't the military discipline a little too good? He tried to sneak closer. When he arrived at Cold Blood Pass, he still did not feel the obstruction of the formation. A stone fortress alone could not stop him at all. He almost suspected that this was a trap. Once he stepped into the city, he would immediately be ambushed. The sounds of killing shook the heavens. But this idea was too ridiculous. Therefore, he bravely passed through the pass and entered the city. The scene in front of him shocked him. Even if there was an ambush from all sides, he wouldn't be so surprised. Collapsed buildings and tumbling ice rocks formed a large area of ruins, as if a vicious beast had wreaked havoc here. The corpses of demon folk littered the entire valley. Even the wind was unable to disperse the overly heavy smell of blood. In particular, a few large pits were piled up with the incomplete limbs of demon folk. The blood had condensed into a lake of ice. Those were the eyes of those who died, with everlasting regret. Their faces were frozen with hatred and fear. It was like a living hell. That's far too exciting. Li Qingshan pursed his lips. He was in high spirits as he advanced carefully. However, even after walking for quite some time, he still did not discover a single living creature. Don't tell me all of this is because of that woman, Chao Qianjiao. Isn't that a little too much? Li Qingshan never imagined that all of this was because of him. Instead, he thought of Chao Qianjiao, who radiated with murderousness. However, she had managed to take down a stronghold of demon folk alone. Not only that, but she had even massacred the entire city. No, that was impossible. The human emperors of the human realm were all capable of such brutality. They would have thrashed the demon folk a long time ago. In reality, the demon king Tu Wancheng had immediately returned to the depths of the demon domain under the supervision of the faceless evil god to await further orders after he had finished cleaning up. He left behind an empty city here. It was impossible for humans to come and occupy this place anyway. Li Qingshan was confused. He relied on his instincts to confirm something major must have happened. It's probably related to that woman, Chao Qianjiao. Instead, he felt a little more admiration for her. To be able to create such a great scene, I really have to give it to you. Although he did not manage to capture a single demon folk to ask for directions, he had already made a great profit. He took out his Sumeru ring and collected several 100,000 corpses effortlessly. He brought them back for little and to burn. There were also many fine armor and weapons. These items would all be useful in the future. As a result, he left this Cold Blood Pass with a bountiful harvest, returning to Black Cloud City. Black Cloud City, Blaze Hall. The Blaze Legion was currently holding a monthly meeting. Li Liahua asked the bearded man with a smile. Old Hu, how's the preparation for the competition of the entire army? Hu Jigang patted his chest. Don't worry, first senior brother. I've already told our brothers to train harder. We'll definitely make those bitches of the Black Tortoise Squad suffer this time. Everyone laughed aloud. The hall was filled with a warm atmosphere. Someone said, Has that Li guy left the city yet? Hu Jigang sneered. Definitely not. I just saw him planting flowers and grass outside the tower yesterday. He probably still thinks this is a herb garden. This led to another round of laughter. They all said, I really don't know what's in his head. He's actually planting flowers in Black Cloud City. He's scared. Of course, he has to calm himself down and comfort him. Humph, how dare he act so arrogantly in front of first senior brother when he's so cowardly? Piss off and drink milk, Li Lia was said to a burly colonel at the door. If he still doesn't set off, send someone to urge him. If he misses the deadline, don't blame me for not reminding him when he's punished by military law. Yes, I'll go urge him right now. Hee, I can also take a look at his garden. The colonel immediately stood up and left. Before long, he returned with a strange expression. Chapter 1461. Dazzling flames shot out from every window of the fiery blaze hall, like torches, lighting up the black clouds and melting the snow, attracting the attention of countless soldiers. I will burn you to ashes. Li Qingshan clenched his teeth, his eyes turning into two burning charcoal, blazing flames spewing out from every pore. In the scorching hot air, he was like a fire god descending, walking towards Li Qingshan step by step. Li Qingshan nodded slightly and laughed. What if what I said is true? Then I will give my army commander position to you. With the roar of a fire dragon, Li Qingshan pounced forward. The short distance of 60 zhang was instantly ignited into a fiery meteor, wanting to destroy Li Qingshan in an instant. Hua! Li Qingshan waved his hand, and a large flag whistled out. He grabbed the pole that was as thick as a water bucket, and the black flag fluttered in the waves of heat. To everyone's surprise, the word slaughter was written on it. Li Qingshan suddenly stopped and stared at the flag with wide eyes. It was obvious that this was not the first time he had seen it. It was the flag of the main army of Cold Blood Pass General Tu Wansheng. It was unknown how much blood and souls had been sacrificed to this flag, and it had experienced countless battles and battles. Even though it had been cut in half, the fierce and murderous aura of the army was still there. It was impossible to copy it. This is impossible. Calm down, don't burn it, or else there will be no evidence. Li Qingshan blew out the few sparks on the flag. He had picked it up from the ruins and felt that the aura it contained was extraordinary, so he brought it back. Li Qingshan snatched the flag and looked at it anxiously. Noticing the smooth cut on the pole, his eyes suddenly lit up. Black tortoise blade, astral blade. Chao Tianjiao must have given this to you, to let you bluff your way through. But I never expected you to be stupid enough to tell such a lie. It seems that someone mentioned my name. Chao Tianjiao's voice came from the Black Tortoise Hall, and she was already in front of the fiery blaze hall. Chao Tianjiao, look at what you've done. Li Liehua tossed the flagpole to her. Chao Tianjiao casually grabbed the flag and glanced at it. This flag was indeed cut by me, but I didn't give it to you. Kid, you also reached the Cold Blood Pass. You've got guts. Li Liehua frowned. Chao Tianjiao wouldn't lie like this, which meant that this kid had really reached the Cold Blood Gate. Li Qingshan, I can't believe that you're able to stand in the midst of an army of 10,000. Picking up the broken flag was considered a brave warrior. However, you can't escape punishment for lying about military intelligence. Chao Tianjiao smiled and said, Brat, what military intelligence did you lie about? I didn't lie. You're the one who lied. Li Qingshan wasn't polite to the other Legion commander. Before Chao Tianjiao could lose her temper, he said indifferently, the 200,000 or 300,000 demon folk army in Cold Blood Pass have all been wiped out. What the hell are you talking about? Chao Tianjiao's eyes widened. She grabbed Li Qingshan's shoulder. I've only just returned from there. Although I've slashed that two Wanching several dozen times and slaughtered several thousand demon folk, I've only just returned from there. Although I cut down that two Wanching several dozen times and slaughtered several thousand demon folk, that guy's recovery rate after demonifying is startling. He's clearly still alive and well. An army of several 100,000. Even if they just stand there and let me kill them, my hands will go limp. Your lies are a little too ridiculous. Li Liehua grabbed Li Qingshan by the collar and pulled him over. He said murderously, "What else do you have to say?" Li Qingshan smiled and asked again, "What if I'm telling the truth?" Li Liehua said, "What if you're lying?" Li Liehua said, "What if you're lying?" One was a raging inferno, while the other was an unchanging mountain. As they faced off, everyone held their breaths. Even the generals of the Blaze Legion admired Li Qingshan's courage slightly. Faced with an enraged Legion commander, they did not even dare to breathe too loudly. Li Qingshan said, "I'll die." Li Liehua laughed out of anger. "Good, very good. If you're telling the truth, then you can have my Legion commander position. Huzi, go get the monk Rangoon." "Yes, sir." Huji accepted the order. A Buddhist chant came from outside the door. "Amit Ba, no need to trouble yourself. I'm here." The abbot walked in slowly. His body did not glow. Only now did Li Qingshan see his appearance clearly. His eyebrows and beard were all white, shining like silver threads. His face was ruddy, and he had a kind expression. It was exactly what a normal person would imagine a master to be. For some reason, the abbot felt that Li Qingshan was rather familiar, but he could not remember where he had seen him before. Li Qingshan grinned. "Master, we meet again. You are." The abbot suspected that there was something wrong with his heavens. Could he not even remember people? "You only slapped me once. Have you forgotten so quickly?" Li Qingshan patted his chest. "It's you." The abbot suddenly thought of the demon he encountered not long ago. "So, you're not a demon folk?" "Of course not. I just practiced the Tome of Freedom. My Een spirit is rather special. I've misunderstood you, Master." "Amit Ba, I see. The Tome of Freedom and the Book of All really are all-encompassing." The abbot sighed. He studied Li Qingshan up and down. He did not seem to trust him too much, but he also seemed to feel a sense of familiarity. This was basically how Buddhism felt about the Mahasvara. "I wonder what happened here." Before Li Qingshan could answer, Li Liehua interrupted. "Master, your heaven's eye and heaven's ear can distinguish between truth and falsehood. You've always been the one to assess the military merits of Black Cloud City. Now, I'd like to invite you to listen to something related to the military merits assessment. Let's see if it's true or not." The abbot said, "Since it's related to the military merits assessment, that's my responsibility. May I ask what it is?" Li Liehua stared at Li Qingshan intently. "Are you brave enough to repeat what you just said?" "Why wouldn't I?" "However, while I, Li Qingshan, may not have the authority of some army commander or local tyrant, I won't be wrongly accused. You can't do it more than 3 times. In front of Senior Sister Chow, Master Yangon, and so many people, I'll ask you again. Li Liehua, what if what I said is true?" Li Liehua frowned. He was violent, but he was not an idiot. Li Qingshan's confidence made him waver slightly. Was it really as he said? Was there a tiny possibility that what he said had happened?